It is Wednesday, February the 27th, 2018. This is a special meeting of Commissioners Court. The meeting is called to order. We're going to discuss item number 2 on the agenda, and that is discuss with department heads and take action on the proposed purchasing policies and procedure manual. I put this on the agenda again because it's something that has been requested that we take action on. And it does say discuss with department heads and take action. So hopefully today, instead of tabling it, we can figure out where we're going to go. I'm going to not make an apology to the treasurer or the auditor's department, but I am going to state that since we've been talking to this, I have gotten a fair amount of feedback of people dropping by or talking, hey, I don't like this, I do like this, I think this is a good idea, I don't think this is a good idea. And I know that you had a committee of 14 that put this together, but since I'm getting a lot of input, I would like us to take the time to go through this document fairly thoroughly and have y'all explain. And I know, Toledo, you said that if indeed we don't have a county purchasing policy and procedures manual, then we default to the state.
Yes, sir.
Purchasing.
We're supposed to.
We're supposed to, okay. And I guess one of the questions that I would ask today is, what have we been doing in the past? Why do we seem to have a sense of urgency at the moment, or at this time, to go to this? Is it a issue with the auditors from the outside banging on us? And I know they arrived, what, Monday? So, they're not here, are they?
They're not in here.
Okay, all right. And we didn't pay them to sit in here, I don't think, anyway. So anyway, commissioners, I guess what we need to do is flip through this policy. I've highlighted the things, I've put some okays and no's and question marks and post-it notes on my copy. Would y'all like to proceed and let's go through it?
Yes.
Okay. Page 1, page 2 is the contents, page 3 is the purchasing policies and procedures. I really had nothing in there. I see a highlight on yours.
I do. It says this section applies only to a county in which a county purchasing agent has not been appointed. I think we talked about that the last time. If we're going.
We don't have an appointed purchasing agent.
Mm-hmm.
We do not.
But we talked about the possibility of having one, right?
Well, we talked about the possibility, and if the county wanted to have one, Toledo already has that experience. She would just have to be recertified. But when you do have a purchasing agent, then that requires all of the county to go through the purchasing agent for their purchases.
And we talked about that if we were going to do that, or if we were looking at doing that, we realized that that's going to cause extra work on your department, and your workload is already heavy. And who takes on the assignments that she's had in the past? So, is that something we're looking at for this year, or are we going to be discussing that in the upcoming budget?
We would have to discuss it in the upcoming budget.
And that would be something that I think that the Commissioners Court would need to decide on.
Yes.
The way that this policy is drafted is based on the fact that we don't have a purchasing agent.
Okay.
If you do have a purchasing agent, you're still going to have a policy to follow. It's just going to have some different guidelines.
Okay.
As this one is right now, it doesn't take away any purchasing authority from any department heads.
Okay.
Each department head is still their own purchasing agent.
Mhm.
This just gives them some guidelines to follow to make the purchasing more smooth, transitioning from the treasurer's office and through the auditor's office. Because it's my understanding that statute states that if we don't have a purchasing agent with a population our size, that it falls back onto the county auditor's office.
Okay.
So this is
And that
where
was
this
one of
kinda
the highlights that was brought to my attention. Are we actually now going to start having to go to a purchasing agent? So I just wanted You
No,
explained it quite well.
There's a place in here to where
Mhm.
if the department head would like the auditor's office to purchase on their behalf,
Mhm.
there's a purchasing requisition form in here.
Okay.
And they can submit that to our office and we can help with or purchase. But if the department start throwing lots of purchasing on our office, then I could potentially see the auditor's office having to increase, with another employee.
So as of now, we're discussing this without the idea of a purchasing agent.
That's
And
my
the department heads to act as the
department
purchasing
heads, this is
agent
as their own
unless
agent.
they need help from the auditor's
Yes, ma'am.
department.
Michelle, did you have a question or a comment?
It just, in reading the statute, just wanted to reiterate that if we did go to the purchasing agent, there's like a whole procedure that has to be followed to do that, which includes bringing the board together, and the board is the one that makes that decision. The board is made up of the district judges. If there's not 3 district judges in that county, then it's the district judges and the county judge, I believe. But there's another statute that you follow for actually creating that purchasing agent. And that is, just the one thing that I want to mention, we do have that
Okay.
process that you have to follow.
I don't think that's our goal for today, though,
Right.
based on what we have in front of us and what we're talking about.
No, this isn't trying to create
Okay.
a position, this
Fair
is
enough.
still giving the authority to each
Good.
individual department.
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe
Madam DA?
I'm not reading this correctly, but the way that Talia's explaining it isn't exactly the way this reads. Because there's nowhere in the policy manual that I've found that says that the department head is acting as his own purchasing agent. The way the policy, and maybe I'm just reading it wrong, the policy says that pretty much all of us would
Are you past page 3?
Yes.
But it's further.
Sure, go ahead and bring your point up, I just
But,
wanna,
but that's my point, that if that's the case, then that needs to be clearly written in the policy, because the way this policy reads is that on page 7, it talks about the county auditors will oversee all purchases of supplies, materials, and equipment required or used for contracts for all repairs of property used. And that it needs to clearly say, then it does say, that we're responsible for following the policy, but it doesn't say that we continue as the purchasing agent. The way I read that means that
they got it.
correct.
Yeah.
It doesn't change anything that you're doing now. Our office now oversees all of the purchasing that goes through. It's just after the fact, which is still gonna be the same. The invoices are gonna come through, we're gonna look at them, or we're gonna, approve them, or we're not gonna approve them.
Okay, right behind the sentence that where she talked about the auditors must approve all is that where you were?
On page 7, it says oversee. So, the way I would read that, and perhaps I'm wrong, is that they would be making all the purchases. We would have to call them and ask them for permission to purchase any item between $1 cent and $1,000.
No, that's not what that means.
No, but if you know you're gonna be purchasing something, you should call and get a purchase order for that vendor and place your order with a county purchase order so that, it goes through the proper channels. And, 1099s can go to all the different companies that they really need to go to.
So,
John?
on that same sentence, the way it's worded, should that last part be contracts with an S? Because the way it's worded, it makes it sound like y'all are the ones that are gonna contract everything. That if there's a repair, that y'all are, it's the way it's worded. So is it supposed to say like y'all are gonna oversee the contracts with an S?
It's possible, I mean, if we can change the wording, we're not, like I said, we're not trying to take away anybody. I don't want to do all y'all's purchasing unless, you
My
guys
office
open up
is
we're
supposed
just
to be
to
the
oversee.
holder of the contracts.
Yeah, we hold the contracts, we make sure that everything is done correctly with the bidding process of the contracts. We oversee the purchasing as a whole.
I think it's just the wording, because the way it reads, it makes it sound like y'all are actually gonna be the ones doing the contracting.
So-
Related to that as well.
Well, excuse me, should it say approved? Because that's what the auditor's office does, they approve all bills. And if it's a big purchase through a contract, that's gonna be something, a sizable amount, like purchasing vehicles or something that's $50,000 more.
But it says for all repairs to property used.
Okay. I'm gonna ask that we hold the conversation for just a minute. I wanna get past page 3. And if I get abrupt, I'm gonna keep us on task because it's important everybody has their input, get your questions answered, leave here with an understanding of what's going to work best for the county, and also to take care of the need of what the auditors have and they're required to do. So, for the moment, is your question answered on
Yes,
page
we
3?
just, she answered it when she said, we're looking at this
Right.
moving forth as without a purchasing
Okay.
agent.
And then page 4 and 5 is definitions. Anybody have any issues with any of the definitions?
Can we go back to page 3 real quick? I'm sorry, I was holding my phone, but, we have the effective date on here. And it's listed as January 1st, 2018. I know that at one point there was a conversation that we would approve it and then it would be effective that date. And I think we have some real concerns because you're gonna have things that
What
go.
page are you on?
I didn't see that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind. I
You-
looked forward and
You were
forgot.
biting your tongue for a reason. All right, all together now, we're gonna be on page number 6. I went through an ethics commission training in October of this last year. And one of the things the ethics commission said 5 or 6 times is that regardless of what you think, we are not a got you organization. And I say that to say, I don't think the auditors are proposing this so we create a gotcha type of situation. So I would like us to go through this with the open mind of, as we put this, or go through this and come to a conclusion, at the end of the day, what's going to work best for the county, for the taxpayers' dollars that we're spending. And then the other idea is that the auditors keep us all out of jail.
May I expand on that?
Sure.
I've
You want
worked,
to stay out of jail too?
yes,
Okay.
definitely. I worked for 3 different school districts in the county, and I've never worked at a school district that we didn't have to get a PO number to purchase anything. It helps keep track of where our money's going, plus it helps them keep up with the billing. Yes, it's paperwork and it's a process, but with Mr. Cannon's work of the email system that he's gonna set up, that could be done through emails.
Absolutely.
It's not gonna take that long to do it. You know what you need to buy, shoot it over there, they'll give you a PO number and go get it. It's as simple as that. I wanna share a story with you all. When I went to work
Is it a
for
short story?
It's short. When I went to work for TDC, for Wyndham School District, they asked me to build a greenhouse. I needed some concrete. I turned in the paperwork to my principal. I got it back with some numbers on it. I just assumed, I didn't ask, I assumed that was PO number. I ordered the concrete truck shows up at the back of the unit. My principal called me and asked me, what's going on? I said, I got the concrete here for the project. She said, we don't have a PO number for it. She said, you're a little bit too much aggressive for our system. It takes time to get PO numbers in Wyndham School District. But, you know, it helps them keep track of where our money's going.
What'd you do with the concrete?
We poured it. And I told them I would pay for it if I had to. It wasn't 2 yards.
Okay, Michelle, is that where that date is coming in at on page 6?
Yes.
And I highlighted and I put not retro. That would be my thought.
No,
because-
we wouldn't want to retro it, it
Yeah.
would just be whenever you guys approve it.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, so we're good with that?
And, yeah, the only other thing is that, you know, depending on any edits to any other concerns, and the reason why that is such a concern is because of, a particular contractor that we use, that we budgeted in the budget process to build 3 dump site buildings. And then we've also used already this budget cycle for, the repairs for Harvey. And he also works at many of the other buildings.
Sure.
And I just don't want to get into a circumstance where we put this into effect and we're already at that point that, you know, it could be a concern. I
And you're
was
talking about
thinking-
hitting the limits for the different contractors?
Exactly.
Okay,
Which is also a, you know, discussion that I'm gonna
Sure.
have later on as well. But that was my concern with the date.
Okay.
I have one question on the very first sentence, and it talks about, It is the policy of Grimes County acting through its duly employed auditor's office to comply fully with all purchasing laws and amendments of the state of Texas. And I wrote the question, how are we not complying, and how are we not complying currently?
Well, for one, we don't have a purchasing policy established by Commissioners Court.
So it is partly the policy not having it.
Right, as far as not complying with some of the state laws, there have been a few occasions to where we approached that vendor, Mark, to where we should have went out for bids. And I think our county auditors have found those the last couple of times, maybe, if I'm speaking correctly.
Okay.
The auditor's office has been pretty on top of making sure that when the invoices come in, if it's something that we see that we think might be a little bit on the line with the state statutes, you know, then we'll question it by going through, I don't wanna throw out a bunch of terms because I don't want it to throw you all off, but there's like buy board and, you know, different ways we can, purchase things that go over those special limits. So as a whole, we're not technically really in any major violations. There have been a couple of issues. And it's just, the policy is to keep us in compliant with the law, but also to, like you stated, is to ensure that we're spending the county's money, you know, the public's money in the
Right.
best, you know, as possible.
Right.
And not just frivolously going out and buying because it's convenient to go right here.
Gotcha, okay, thank you. Anything else on page 6? On page 7, County Purchasing Act, I think you've already explained, but the Purchasing Act applies to all departments, all district, county, precinct offices, employees, subdivisions, county, precinct offices, etc. But it's kind of in the same way that it's always been. Each department's going to have their ability to make their purchases for the time being. However, there are gonna be times when we should get purchase order numbers and things of that sort.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that may be where they're talking about the contract for repairs. In the paragraph right below there where it talks
Well,
about,
it depends on what kind of repairs that they're needing. We go out for bid for vehicle repairs.
I think it's more or less the repair, that we're talking about, because if
Repair of building and maintenance.
yes,
There's a statute.
Well, that falls under, you're over the Navasota Annex and Ag Extension.
yes,
Mr. Dobianski is over the jail. And then the judge is over all the other buildings here in Anderson. He's responsible for the buildings in Iola.
My question is though, if we're using the same vendor, and that vendor is exceeding 50,000, are we running into an issue there? Because he and I might use the same vendor, where I'm responsible for my budget, he's responsible, the judge and him are responsible for their budget. And if they're exceeding together, how do you do that? Is it still gonna be looked at on a per budget, like my budget does not exceed 50,000? Your
The
budget does
definition
not.
of the entity is Grimes County as a whole.
Mhm.
That's what every purchasing class that I've been to, through the state, is the Grimes County is the entity as a whole. There is an exemption, which we haven't got to yet, because it's further in the pages, it's 262.024, where you can go in and grant exemptions. Commissioners Court can put certain exemptions in to supersede this policy. There's one for public safety, there's, like the Harvey thing, that one would have been, those are repairs that we needed to do to secure, to make the building safe for employees and the public. There's a whole list of them if you guys want to print it out. Utilities, certain different types of maintenance, films, manuscripts, or books, electric power, gas, water, I mean, the list goes on.
But there's a legal avenue for us to bypass that when necessary.
Yes, and that's
Okay.
something that you would need to get with John C. if you want to put something ahead of time in the purchasing policy to establish that beforehand. Then he would need to get the correct terminology to place it in here. Or the option is, if the court wanted, if we see something that's coming up and we know that we might be pushing that threshold, then we can go ahead and come to court and get your blessing. It's whichever way you want.
I really suggest that we do it ahead of time, because I have no way of knowing what he's spending over there while I'm getting the same contractor to do the work for me. So if it's already wrote in there, then we're not doing a per basis by basis, you know,
But
case by
that's
case.
addressed later on in the, actually on page 9, where that would need to be placed in there. But I don't wanna skip
What
ahead.
vendor are you worried about?
Well, sometimes we use the same contractor, say Mr. Abraham or somebody, to do the work.
And one thing that's important to remember is that the exemptions that keep coming up, you can do that with exemptions. When you're looking at building repairs, you don't have time to wait 72 hours.
Right.
Plus the courtroom should be available and things like that.
Right.
When you're using this particular vendor. It would be impossible to go out for bid if you have a contractor that could possibly do $50,000 worth of repairs to our buildings in a year, because what are you gonna go out to bid for? You don't even know what the repairs are gonna be in the beginning, and you're going out for bid for a $500 door repair or a $150 hot water heater installation, you know, working on repairing boards in a deck, things that are going wrong at the jail. It would be impossible, which is why the statutes, I believe, you know, are set up to say it is under each elected official, and it talks about projects. And that's, each time that we have gone over this, when I was responsible for the building maintenance here, I worked with John C., and that's the statute that he always went to. And it's very specific in the language, but it's not contained in here. If that was put in here, according to the statute, it would be clear.
Do you know what that statute is?
I can get it here, I had it, and
That's what I'm saying, on page 9 is where that statute can be put in there.
Got a comment.
Okay, yeah. Let's get past this one.
262.024, that's the one that I quoted a while
Yes.
ago. There's a whole slew of exemptions that you can put in there. But it's just getting with John C. and getting the right terminology and place it in the manual.
Al?
your exemptions are, but what constitutes needing an exemption is
Al Taylor?
The only thing I'd have to say, Judge, is, yes, me and Ms. Walker, we do use the same, environmental, we use the same contractor. That will put us over 50,000. So what that turns into me is Mr. Abraham, is I like, he knows our buildings, he
Okay.
knows the functionality of our buildings. So what that does to me as a maintenance manager is say, Charlie, I'd like you to be on call for me until I know that we're fixed. Well, that leaves environmental and Commissioner Walker out, because he's not gonna want to stray away from me. And then he goes and does a big job for Commissioner Walker, and then he can't come to me, which I really need him, because if I have somebody that's, per se, these doors, Charlie did the doors before I was aboard. If he goes to somebody goes to fix this door, where Charlie might think it's a slight increase of this or that, some other contractor, and Commissioner Husfield knows this, he might just say it needs a new door.
Yeah.
So, I don't, in this, my whole thing in this policy for maintenance department is, if we're gonna be proactive in this, and the only question I have for Talia is, she has obviously looked over every department in our system. Has maintenance at this time did anything wrong to go against this policy?
No.
Okay, so you're innocent, I'm worried about the rest of us, okay?
I understand that, but I wanted to know
I
for my
understand. Yeah.
clarification.
So, I guess, you say we have the language here, probably?
There's a section in here that refers to exemptions,
Mm-hmm,
and it has a little bit of 262.024.
right. I
But
see it
there's-
mentioned on page 9.
I think it's on page 9, yes,
But
sir.
it doesn't cover.
That's the section where we could get some terminology
add
that Michelle is talking about, that she was with John C., and place that in there, so we don't have that issue with those particular vendors and the departments using those different vendors. If it's in the policy, then we're not at fault.
Good, okay. Well, can you, Talita, and you, Michelle, work the language
Can
and
John C. work the
that what
language?
John C. would approve or, say is correct, and we incorporate that into the policy?
I would say I would feel more comfortable with us getting with John C. and letting him draft the verbiage.
Sure, that's okay.
Absolutely.
All
I
right.
just wanted to mention that it's actually 262.023, which is your competitive requirements for certain purchases.
Which is,
That's referenced under the violations of the Act, 262.023.
So C is in applying the requirements established by subsection A, which is before a county may purchase one or more items under a contract that will require an expenditure exceeding $50,000, the Commissioners Court of the county must, and it's comply with the competitive bidding. It goes through all of that. But C says, in applying the requirements established by subsection A, all separate, sequential, or component purchases of items ordered or purchased with the intent of avoiding the requirements of this subchapter from the same supplier by the same county officer, department, or institution are treated as if they are part of a single purchase and of a single contract. In applying this provision to the purchase of office supplies, separate purchases of supplies by an individual department are not considered to be part of a single purchase and single contract by the county if a specific intent to avoid the requirement of this subchapter is not present.
Right, so the verbiage is intent, so as long
Yeah.
as we're not intending on going
Exactly.
against,
Which
then
is,
you're okay.
I think it's just happening as more maintenance is being done,
Right, but we're not
There's no
intending on
intent.
breaking the law.
Yeah.
That's
and so
correct.
it's saying that we don't have to meet that competitive requirement.
Right, okay.
If that's not the intent,
So do we have an agreement with Michelle and Toledo? We'll visit with John C. to develop the language to incorporate to the policy?
That's
Excellent.
great.
I mean, it's
Okay.
kind of in there right here, and it may
Yeah.
be some
It-
wording under
It
the violation.
references, I went through and made sure,
There's no
just to
intent.
give a little bit of background, since we do have a lot of other people in here. I didn't come up with this policy on my own, we did have a group together, it was drafted by two different old Grimes County policies that was done before my time, that were never approved, and it was also, we used Ellis County and I think it was Washington County, and we pulled different terminology and things to make it fit the population of Grimes County and we thought that we needed.
Okay.
So all of those statutes, the 262.024, the 262.023, all of that is referenced at some point through this because that's the statutes that we need to follow.
but now we need to incorporate C,
Yes.
because I see A, I don't see C.
What page we on now, Judge?
8,
We're on,
9.
I was on page 9.
Well, I think we skipped
We
8.
skipped.
Yeah, we skipped 8. So we got that taken care of, but on 8, the one note that I had was counties must comply with a host of procurement and financial requirements, including federal procurement requirements which flow through to states and localities receiving federal grants. And I get, my question, I haven't read this. Has anybody else read?
When we get federal money, it is through grants,
Right?
and Jesse Murphy in my office handles the grants.
Mhm.
And believe you me, she is a stickler, we go strictly by the law.
Well, and she's coached me on a couple of grant approvals that I've been involved in already, and I would agree with that.
Yeah.
So we feel like she's the subject matter expert on the grant language. I'm good. Anything else on,
We have hands raised.
yes, sir, Todd?
Yeah, right about that, the very first paragraph on that page is talking about you got a secure purchase order beforehand. Historically speaking, for several years, we issue our own POs, so, are we doing away with that process?
Let's back up on that. Y'all get the POs from us at the beginning of the year.
No, that's not gonna change, to answer your question.
Okay, but can we at least emphasize exemption because of that or something, 'cause
There's a spot in here that says, because we talked about it, about there's certain things at Road and Bridge and Sheriff's Office because of your time frame, your work hours and all of that, that there are certain things that would be an exemption to. We're not changing anything that anybody already does, we're just implementing more policies to make sure that we're purchasing correctly.
Okay.
So your stuff's not gonna change at all.
But I think what you just said, Talita, and earlier you just said, that really does clear up a lot of the questions that I had in my mind.
Yeah. technically your POs are issued from us, so you are getting them ahead of time. That's not gonna change.
I would just like to point out that the district attorney's office also, similarly to the sheriff's department, is a unit in the county that has emergency purchases or unexpected purchases because of the nature of trial work. If there's certain ways, I mean, for example, something becomes important and we need it for trial and somebody has to go get it right now. Or, you know, last night, we're coming back at 9:20 at night from Houston from talking to witnesses, and, you know, if a car breaks down or that kind of thing, there's just, the nature of the work is not just, you can't always plan for every eventuality when you're
Right.
looking at trials, so that's
But I
just
mean,
something-
don't y'all have a county credit card that in the event you do have a breakdown or something, you can utilize it at that?
That was one of the things I wanted to discuss when we got to credit cards.
That
Okay.
comes up in the credit card policy. That'll come up.
Okay,
But,
all right.
just, that is.
okay. John?
I hate to go backwards, but that sentence that I brought up on page 7, you asked us to go back to page 3 and remove it and read it for us, or rewording it, because the way it's worded is not in reflection.
Okay, remind me, which one on page 7?
The one that says about the auditors overseeing it, and
Second
at the end of it
paragraph.
says, the way it's worded, it makes it sound like they're the ones who are going to do all the contracts and contracting. I just think it needs a change in the wordings, some further explanation.
Well, if you enter into a contract, it has to go before Commissioner's Court.
Right, but the way that,
The way this reads is that if I want to make any purchase, whether it's a pen or a pencil.
Okay, so we
it
could say
needs
the
to be-
county auditor's office shall verify all purchases. I mean, if
I
somebody
think
else has a different
I think it needs
terminology,
to
that's
have in
fine.
there that make it clarify in the language that departments heads are still in charge of their budget in some form or fashion.
We've never been tried to take over your budget.
It
We're
states
just
that
trying
somewhere
to
throughout
make
the
sure
other-
that the money that is spent in the county is spent legally and that we are good stewards of the people's money.
There is a spot down here, and I
Office
can't
has
think
been
of what
very
page
good
it's
stewards
on.
of office
Okay.
money. We returned money last year to the county, so, I mean, I just want some clarification. The way it reads, from a legal perspective, in my opinion as a lawyer, is that we are losing control to the auditor's office.
No, that's not what it is. So if you wanna come up with a way to make it fit to where legally, from a lawyer's perspective, that will work for you, I mean, it's fine. This isn't a policy, this is not my policy, this is the county's policy.
Understand.
I'm understanding.
That's
why we're working.
I understand that, but I just.
If you wanna
wanna
put the
make
word contracts, that's fine. I don't know how else you would wanna state it.
But what you're saying is you'd like to see somewhere in there a sentence saying department heads are going to be responsible. Is that what I heard you say?
Yes,
But the
ma'am.
bottom line is, the auditor's office has to approve all purchases.
Regardless who purchases them or
Re-
not.
Exactly, regardless of who purchases it. And if I get something in my office that is questionable, we're gonna research it. And, you know, we may decide to pay it, we may say, no, this is not an allowable expense.
But it might have to be brought before Commissioner's Court.
Yeah,
That's-
but
That's
it-
true.
But at the end of that, if auditor's office says we're not paying it, then there's question from the employee or the department head or elected official, then we would bring that before
Before court,
commissioner's
yes,
court,
sir.
and commissioners would then, the court would then make that decision. I wish John C. was here, so that was the right process, but I believe that is the correct
That is true.
process.
What if that material's already been purchased or the
That's right.
services have been rendered?
That's the problem.
Well,
And then the invoice comes in, then you say, no, we're not paying that, then what happens?
I'll give you an example.
Well, and that goes all the way.
Okay,
back to the-
time out. We're here for discussion and everything, but I do want it one at a time, okay?
I will give you an example.
Okay,
We had a DNA test that was ordered by the court.
Okay.
We attempted to get approval to have that done, and it needed to be done in a timely fashion for the court's purposes, cost $1,000. We paid for it out of a credit card, personal credit card, 'cause we couldn't get an approval, we couldn't get the county credit card to even approve it ahead of the thing, and to go up to that level, and we tried to do that, and it didn't work out. So we paid for it off a personal credit card, and we asked for reimbursement. That was a court-ordered thing that we were required to do.
mhm.
My concern, it's already been paid for, is that gonna leave I don't wanna leave my employee out in the wind who's standing there in San Antonio getting something done. And so those are my concerns, just like you, if you buy something for trial, if I need something blown up, if I need 15 pictures blown up, And they said, well, that's not allowable expense, I've already paid for that.
Okay.
You know, those are the concerns I have.
All right. Jen?
I am the steward, or whatever you wanna call it, the credit holder.
Okay,
Nobody contacted me. My cell phone is available to everybody. I have a list of everybody's credit card. When something like that happens again, call me. We will get it taken care of. But nobody contacted me.
I did have a conversation with you, John Wren, on this situation. I thought the treasurer's office was contacted.
I did speak to the treasurer's office. I spoke to Heather that
You
day.
didn't speak to me.
I spoke to the person who I've always been directed to get assistance from the credit cards, and she tried to fix it, and it was only after several times and it not being able to be fixed that I finally put $1,000 purchase on my personal card because I'm in San Antonio trying to get work done and holding up a line, and frankly, it was very embarrassing. I'm in a lobby full of people.
Well, didn't you have time to call us before you got the card to leave to go to San Antonio?
I didn't have any anticipation that my card wouldn't work because
Some of those cards won't work for medical. And
But-
our understanding is that was part of a medical either.
it was paternity testing on a child sexual assault. But the point to the matter is, this is not a point and finger situation.
I understand.
But I went to do business, important business for the court.
Okay,
I did the best I could do. I took my card, it didn't work. I called the treasurer's office. The treasurer's office, they made an effort, it did not work. I ended up having to resort to charging it to my card. It took me almost 6 weeks to get reimbursed for that. I didn't do anything wrong with any malice or
why did
ill
it take
intent.
6 weeks to get reimbursed?
That's a long story that really shouldn't be aired here, but the point is, who is to say that that's not authorized and now I'm out $1,000? Because that could happen according to this policy.
Okay, were you charged interest on that 1,000?
No, I wasn't, and I'm not trying to make an issue. I
No,
did
no, I'm-
eventually get reimbursed.
Well, I mean-
But this is a very good illustration
Okay.
of how an employee could get hung out to dry, because now if somebody says, oh, you shouldn't have done that, now I'm holding the bag for $1,000 for a DNA test for work.
Anything that's court ordered is gonna supersede anything that we do.
Yeah.
So
But
that
you gotta
puts it in an
understand
issue.
too, that when we pay a bill, and if it's to a vendor, and they're not incorporated, and it's over $600, we have to send them a 1099 according to IRS. So we have things to follow too, so it's kind of a, you know,
Well, and I think it's important we get all this discussed,
Right.
because everybody wants to stay out of jail. I mean, and I say that candidly, but I mean seriously too.
Well, and this vendor that he went to, I contacted them, they said that they would accept a purchase order from the county. However, they would not release results until they had a check. So, I don't know how long it takes them to run their tests and stuff, but, you know, that could be something that maybe we issue a PO when you take it down there, and then, you know, they send us an invoice, and we have the check ready, get it approved through court, and have it ready whenever the, DNA test is ready, and you have a check to take down there with you.
Typically, they won't accept it without payment to do the testing, that's the problem.
Okay.
Well, but I talked with them, and they did say they would accept a PO from the county, but they would have to be paid before they release the information.
Which is the holdup, the releasing of the information.
So how quickly did, I don't know, how quickly did you get your information?
I really hate to belabor this, Judge, in this setting, but, so, I get contacted, the financial offices were not happy about this purchase.
Okay,
So, I talked to Mary. Mary, as she just said, was going to call them.
okay,
I did not turn in for my reimbursement because the agreement that Mary and I came to was they'll bill you, you'll cut a check, and then they'll just they'll refund my $1,000. Mary tried unsuccessfully for the better part of 3 weeks to make that happen, and finally, after missing 2 deadlines, I finally said, Mary, can I please just turn this in for reimbursement? I've been out this $1,000 now going on a month, and that's when I finally turned it in, and you never did get a bill from them.
May I ask
Sure.
a question? Did they give you any kind of documentation, or was that all private that can be shared?
It's private because the victims.
And they don't give you any kind of receipt or anything?
They did give me a receipt. I
When,
Okay.
when it's a court order like that, if you could turn in a copy of the court order with the invoice, that way we know we have no way to,
And let me add to this, and my boss, who's an attorney, can back me up if I'm wrong on this, but the issue with that is, if I turn in that order to go with the receipt, it's now gonna be public, and that's got that kid's name on it, that anybody can see who a juvenile victim is that has been sexually assaulted, and that's
well,
not okay.
I have received court orders in my office that are sealed and that are not to be opened. A copy of it, or a copy on top, has the judge's signature to pay that bill. And I still have
All right,
that.
I guess the question is, how often is this kind of thing gonna come up? And I know you don't know, but how often is it gonna come up?
It happens typically a handful of times a year. For just a little bit of edification for everybody, the state lab, DPS, does DNA testing if they're trying to figure out if this blood belongs to Joe Powell. But what the state never does is paternity testing. If we have an incest case where father has done or brother has done or something like that, we have to go to a private lab.
Okay,
It happens typically a handful of times a year, 2 or 3. Our office, because the sheriff's office, and we've done one of these for the sheriff's office, which is the one we're talking about, and did one the previous year for the police department, because our office tries to, as best we can, work with the court to help, because these tests are so expensive. That was something else that was confusing to us when all this became an issue in November, is I had literally done the exact same thing the year before, and nothing was said about it, the bill was paid, there was never any issue, and then this year, did the exact same thing, exact same expense, and it turned into a big thing, which was part of the confusion on our part, and part of the reason we're sitting here today trying to get this ironed out.
So the biggest issue was with the credit card that wouldn't allow a purchase of
It has
medical?
limits on it.
Can that be changed
I
for
don't
certain
think
credit
it-
cards?
It doesn't have I'm not talking about dollar limits, I'm talking about.
For medical?
It's got, but I can't change it. If he calls me and tells me that he's gonna do this, then you can go in there and change it. But
You
we're not
can't
gonna
change
do-
that, his particular or their particular credit card
Heather has
to allow,
it
to
has
allow that to happen from now on?
And then it
Could
has
that
to
be
go
possible?
away.
It has to be per purchase.
Right.
It can't be, that card can't be allowed to do that individually.
Government credit cards are a lot different than personal credit cards, and they have different functionalities at different vendors. And that's something whenever the state goes through and decides that they're gonna use a certain credit card company to do all of the governmental purchasing through, they set that up to where it defaults, so it limits the different types of transactions that you can do, but you can override them, but it's for each individual transaction.
You can't override a
doesn't leave it
particular
open
credit
wide,
card to
just
allow
so
that to
that's-
happen.
no, sir.
It has to be per purchase.
Commissioner Husband?
I was just gonna say, is there any way that we can amend this policy to prevent this situation or any situation like this? And
That should
solve
be
this
covered
problem?
underneath the credit card policy, which is further on down
Okay.
in here. But to get back to John's original question on page 7, what if we just change it to says the county's auditor's office will ensure that all purchases of supplies, materials, and equipment required, new or used, shall comply with the purchasing policies and procedures. And then right underneath that, it says, each department head or elected
Right.
official is responsible for following the purchasing policies to secure goods and or services for their departments.
I think what you just said reflects
Yeah.
what your intent is a whole lot better than this does. I
Okay.
think that would work.
So we're good with that.
Can you make that change?
I made it.
Michelle?
Well, we're still on page 7. This was something that we brought up in the previous commissioner report. The County Purchasing Act. It reads here, I just wanted to clarify where I got the language that I did. It says the County Purchasing Act provides a general legal and procedural framework that emphasizes price rather than total cost and value, openness, control, and accountability rather than efficiency. It is the duty of the county's chief procurement official, so I don't know who that's supposed to be either. But I just wanna make sure, like, very clear, it's saying that we emphasize price rather than total value, and that we emphasize accountability rather than efficiency.
And I highlighted what you read and I put no beside it. Well, I did. Be my witness. Uh,
At least we're on the same page.
Well, and I'll take it back to what Greg Cannon presented this morning at Commissioner's Court. He's working on price, but price is not his first issue. His first issue is the quality of the systems, the equipment, and so forth that he's purchasing. So,
There's an exemption for that too, it's called best value.
right, and I noted that further on in there somewhere. But that language, you know, I think all of us have a tendency to look at price first. And then the point comes in, and even with road and bridge materials, you know, this limestone's cheaper than that limestone, but this is a whatever grade, and that's a different grade, you know, so. So, you know, those kind of things. So I guess there's not an issue, I don't have a major issue with us focusing on price, but at the end of the day, cheaper's not always cheaper.
Right.
And I understand that there's, you know, other language later in here, but it's saying that this is our purchasing act. So
Yeah.
it's saying this is how we will do business. This is what we will follow as the county, and we're adopting this.
Yeah.
So, and that's a worse spot to have that language, in my opinion. And then the next paragraph, I just wanted to point out that the language in here as far as what Commissioners Court will approve as far as contracts, and that the auditor's office has the authority to approve all contracts under the statutory limit, and that is not what we do. As far as Commissioners Court, we have brought all contracts before Commissioners Court. If it's a contract, it comes before Commissioners Court, and there's no authority that's been given for contracts through the auditor's office. So that is a huge change in this purchasing act to what we're currently doing.
Technically, the auditor's office oversees all county contracts. We are the steward of the contracts.
Right, but it's
We can
saying
change,
as
we can
opposed
change the
to-
verbiage.
Wait,
Again, this
go
is
ahead.
part where, this was some of that stuff where we kind of picked and choosed and meshed together. That's what I'm saying. This is the court's purchasing policy. You guys can change it up however you want. If there's a language or verbiage in here, somebody offer another wording. I mean, I'm open for options.
Sure.
This is not my baby.
So, Michelle, do you have some thoughts on language or omissions of language?
Well, I really thought our county attorney was gonna be here, so, I think that that is something, again, that he probably should draft. It was just something I wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of. And it just seems like we're getting a little defensive, and I just wanna be clear, I'm not trying to attack, I'm just trying to make sure that we all address everything in here, so that we have a good policy that's agreeable to everybody when we start, and we don't have to go back and go through revision after revision, because that's when confusion comes in, and that's when everybody doesn't get the memo.
Well, and I hear what you're saying, and I don't know that we'll get it right the first time.
You're
But
not-
So-
basically, Commissioners Court
We've had
approves
our
all
personnel
contracts.
policy, and we've
Yes.
changed it 4 or 5 times since I've been here,
Yeah.
so.
And John C., you know, put the word in my ear that he says it's your policy, and once you put it in, if you find something that's wrong or is not working or omitted, we have the right as a court to bring it back up and
Excellent, but I
go
just,
through it. Sure.
personal opinion, don't feel like we should approve it when we know that we're not there yet.
We can take out the word approve on that line and just say the auditor's office shall oversee or shall
Review.
ensure, shall review. I mean, there's different
Review.
types of terminology, we can change that. Ultimately, that's what the office does, we do it anyway, whether you guys know that we do it or not.
Yeah.
We do it.
Sure.
Well, and then the Commissioners Court just instead of, must approve all contracts, not necessarily
Yeah,
review the
it's just
exceeding the
taking out-
statutory limit.
So let's say any contracts that are 50,000 or more,
Or in
All
road and bridges
contracts.
cases, 20.
or in road and bridges cases,
Why'd you-
25.
Mary, why
Well,
don't you
technically,
just
Commissioners Court does do all contracts.
contracts.
because
change
you can't
the
enter
word
into a contract
approved
without
to
your approval.
review, and if you find an issue, then you bring it back to court.
Yeah, just remove the exceeding the statutory
Change
limit.
approved
Just
to
take out
review.
exceeding and just say to approve
Exceeding.
all contracts.
Yeah,
That should work.
It's basically, you just need to write the language in there. What this is kind of a description of how it's done in Texas counties. It's been inserted as a policy. It's just a description. So you just need to write what you're gonna do instead of having the description of how Texas counties do it.
So you're saying that it still needs to reach the county, the commissioner's court
Must
Right.
approve
must
all
approve all
contracts.
contracts.
For example, it would say, Grimes County, all of contracts will be approved through Commissioner's Court versus, this description that explains how it's typically done in Texas counties and gives different examples.
Okay, so we can just say that the Commissioners Court must approve all contracts. The Auditor's Office will review contracts under the statutory limit. We do them anyway, that's what I'm saying, we review them. We can take it out,
Right.
but we're still gonna review them.
Yeah,
If we find an
it'd
issue,
just
we're
be
gonna bring
taken
it.
out.
But I do wanna point out, there's plenty of times that I don't get a copy of the contract until it is in this packet. So I don't get a chance to review it until I get the packet.
The packet meaning what, to pay for it? Or, I
No,
mean,
the
'cause
Commissioner
treasurer
Court
does.
packet that has the contract on the agenda.
Okay,
Okay.
but we set up the whole contract tracking that we set up.
I know,
That's all
but
supposed to go through you, and then you're supposed to submit it back to us.
there's not.
We don't get them.
You're still sending out the letters to the officials when their contract's coming up for renewal or auto renews, and doing the checklist that we developed to make sure that that isn't a problem?
Who was
Is
doing
it-
that? Was that Jessica or?
It was something that we developed with Judge Lamont and Jessica Herrera, and then Lisa is doing it, and she's tracking those contracts.
She's tracking the contracts and she notifies when some of them are coming up.
Okay, so you should be getting the contracts before we do, because they should be coming back, as part of that.
We're not.
Okay.
Patty?
And probably need to readdress that whole design and how that's done. I've seen one of those contract update forms come through recently, because it came to me, it needs to be revised so that it goes to Cherie. But I know that one of them came back recently from juvenile probation, and it's awaiting a change to the contract, so it probably just when you revise it to put her name in there instead of mine, so it's not coming to me. The language that says this must be submitted to her and your office. Use something simple like that would probably solve that problem on the old contracts.
Patty?
I know on the road and bridge contracts, all of our contracts we send to the auditor's office, and it has a place for Mary to sign. I don't know if that would maybe work for y'all. I know on our contracts, it does. So therefore, we don't submit anything to the Commissioner's Court or even go out for bids
Unless it has the auditor?
until Mary signs it. So I don't know, maybe that's a solution for you guys as well as the auditor's office, but I know in Road and Bridge, we do wait for their signature before sending out any contracts to be bid out.
So did we solve the previous issue, Talita, Michelle?
Okay, so I changed the wording again while y'all were talking back and forth. So the part where it says the Commissioners Court must approve all county contracts, and then I've marked out the other stuff and said, the Auditor's Office will ensure that the county contracts comply with purchasing policies and procedures. And then it goes on, program officials typically, that whole little.
Okay.
Should it say something in there that the auditor's office will also track expirations, auto renewals, all of those other functions of the contract that
Well,
need
if we're
to be
kind of,
caught?
if we're overseeing and we're already reviewing them, that's something that we're already doing.
I think we ought to be good for right now with the language. Okay?
Judge, if I may.
You may.
Just one comment. If it's the court's decision to approve all contracts, I think we need to be real clear that the definition of what is a contract is very clear. Because right now, it's subject to statutory limits, which are defined by the state. That's clear. When you cross the line from you issue a purchase order, when does it become a contract that the court has to approve? That's my only concern.
If you enter a contract and you are committing county money, it has to go through Commissioner's Court.
Well, what's the definition of contract?
Well, it says
When you're
anything that
locking into an
requires
agreement
yeah,
with the
any
vendor.
agreement.
To do
For
work.
example,
Accepting a
call-
quote?
we
No.
call
No. Accepting a quote's not.
Tree service. Like, we wanna have you come out approvals on county roads for a week's period of time, for an estimated price, $115 an hour, $5,000 a week. Is that a contract?
Well, we enter an annual contract with the tree
We
service,
don't
right?
have an annual contract with them this year.
Oh, okay.
We have had in the past, but we did not this year, and we're not anticipating doing work in excess of the $25,000.
That's kind of why that verbiage was in there about statutory limitations that we just took out.
That's my point, is that the statutory limitations makes a very clear definition of when it needs to come to the court. If you remove that language, then you're gonna create some gray areas about when.
We could put that back in and say Commissioners Court must approve all county contracts exceeding the statutory limit, and then just end it right there. You don't have to put what it is.
Well, there are some contracts, I think, that aren't statutory limit that we still approve, right?
Yeah, they need to approve all contracts.
Not everything's under a statutory limit. Where the bridge is for the most part, but not all.
Basically, what he's saying, that would be, he would be locking into an agreement with a specific vendor to do a service. And if we keep the terminology in there all, then he would need to come before Commissioners Court to get your blessing to do a contract with that vendor.
Well, that would be kind of a bidded project, potentially. Would it be a bidded project?
Yes.
Go out for bids for that? Versus an actual contract, an annual contract if they're gonna do something.
The county has in the past. Well, we have not this year.
But I mean, could we potentially, like you said, just maybe bid that for a certain project when it occurs and put out for
We
bid?
could, but the economic efficiency of going out to bids
Just to-
on a contract that's gonna be less than $5,000 is not very good. So just mechanically,
This week.
Michelle?
One of the definitions that we used previously was if you require a contract that obligates you to purchase from that vendor, and then you would be able to pay in advance, for instance, the maintenance agreements that we have on the boiler chiller system. But if you're just accepting a quote, which means you're paying for services after they're rendered, which would be the same thing. I mean, this is where it gets really confusing. If I call in one company this time to come through and change all of the air filters, and they didn't do a good job, so I use somebody else, you're paying for services after they're rendered, and that doesn't constitute a contract. So it's not really anything that's obligating, a payment, of county money either. So I'm in agreement with Harry. We do need to have some specific language in there, or we get into these problems of was it authorized or unauthorized, and then all the consequences come later.
Lita?
We could, and Todd kind of whispered in my ear to tell me that, underneath the definitions, we can change the definition of what a contract is. As it states right now, it says a formal written agreement executed by the county and a vendor containing the terms and conditions under which the goods or services are being furnished to the county. So if we're not locking into a written formal agreement, unless it's over the statutory limit, then by that, it wouldn't constitute a contract.
And that would solve what you're talking about,
Yes.
wouldn't it?
It depends on what you consider a written formal agreement, because when you're doing maintenance, you have it written out very specific what's gonna be covered for that cost, so that you don't get into a situation where you have somebody come in and say, well, we told you we'd do it for, $10,000, but it was a little bit harder than we thought, so now we're gonna charge additional labor and whatever. And you're signing off on that, to accept that, so that it locks it in for a certain period of time. Is that a formal contract?
That would be a contract. If it's a written agreement and you are binding the county, regardless of the limit of the money, that is, in my books, and John, I'm not an attorney, Andrew maybe can answer, or
Then
get John Z's, but to me, that would be a contract.
Then almost every repair that Al has to do is gonna have to come before Commissioner's Court before any maintenance gets done.
That's not gonna happen.
If he's not locking into a maintenance contract, he's not locking into a maintenance agreement, he's not guaranteeing that this person's gonna get to do this maintenance work every single time something goes down.
Right, but that's what I'm
But
saying.
most
That's
times
where
when we do
maintenance has
interlock
to
in a
be
maintenance
by
agreement, then we
contract.
pay for that in advance. If we know that we're gonna have the same customer coming out and doing the same AC work or whatever, if he's gonna be our vendor and we're gonna issue in a maintenance contract, then that would be a contract and we're gonna sign it and it's gonna go before Commissioner's Court. But if you're just using Gessner Air today because he was convenient, and then you use Abraham Air, I don't even know if that's a vendor,
Doesn't
that's
matter.
not gonna be a contract.
Okay. But you just said yes when I gave that description, that it was a contract, and that's what confused me.
No, that's only if you're going to lock into like a long-term agreement.
Right.
You're
And
gonna
this
say,
is-
I'm
Not a
gonna
per
tell,
project
for
agreement.
6 months, you're gonna be my AC guy.
So I think the discussion was pretty much concerned about the definitions.
Al,
So to help clarify this, I,
promise?
I'm gonna do the best I can on the maintenance side of the house. We, at one time when I was young in this whole program of county maintenance, I had the forethought of preventive maintenance. I wanted to sign a contract. I thought it was okay to get into a binding contract with Gessner Air, that they would yearly come around and clean all my coils, get ready for the summer. So, not knowing the process, I said, sure, we're being proactive. That's my whole thing about maintenance. And it got to Toledo and she said, and I went, wait, getting back to Gary, they've already did the work. They're expecting paid. So we had to readjust and go as what they did at work at that time was under my statutory limits. But I could not enter in that agreement whether it was 1,000 or 100,000 because
Okay.
it was long-term care.
Without going for commercial.
So, without me bringing it to you and saying, okay, this is what I'm trying to do with preventive maintenance and getting your approval, I believe that's where the disconnect in this whole thing is. Yes, I can get Gessner out here because that's who does our air and that they know the systems. And I can have them clean the coils. I just can't say, okay, I'm gonna pay you for the whole year.
Understood.
So I think that's where our disconnect is right now. Are we doing whole year contracts, or are we just doing the contract with me using Gessner when I need them?
And a lot of it is if you're gonna prepay for a service, especially with maintenance agreement, you can't prepay, you can't guarantee the county's gonna pay a vendor prior to services being rendered unless you enter into a maintenance contract. If the county agrees that we're gonna spend X amount of dollars to Gessner's Air to come through and do a countywide clean of all of our stuff, then, only then can we prepay for those services. But if he's just coming out here and there and invoicing us, that's not a contract.
Right,
Right.
okay.
Like Climatech for the boiler chiller.
Yeah.
They're on a yearly contract with us that auto renews.
Are we past the confusion on this? I mean,
I think we're still stuck on page 9, we
We-
got a long way to go.
We need a
You're
better
welcome.
definition for contract.
You're welcome, Judge.
It boils down to,
No,
To maybe
yeah,
getting with
I
the
think we're
county
on page
attorney.
9 now.
say again?
I think we're on page 9, did we go over page 8, professional services?
Yeah,
Best
we-
value, that's the part where we were talking about the best value for,
no, we were still on page 7 just then.
Page 7 was the value, best value and
yeah,
accountability
on page
rather
8,
than
kinda-
efficiency.
It talks about it a little bit more about using cooperative purchasing programs.
Yeah,
Those are just options that we can use. You know, we have a couple of different vendors who are cooperative, and you can purchase through them, and it supersedes a lot of the contract bidding.
Because they've gone out to
Because they've already
bid.
done it
they're on that
statewide.
particular list or whatever.
Yeah, it's on
Right.
page 8, but I think we're good, so page.
Okay, page 9?
Real quick, I'm sorry, just wanted to, asterisk the professional services and make sure that we have that updated and we've listed AG opinions. I know that there's some AG opinions out there, what is and what isn't. Professional services, I don't know how current that is if we use joint form.
I know that whenever I put anything that had anything to do with statutes, like quoting statutes, Cinda went back and checked all of those to make sure that the terminology was still current.
So you feel that one's good?
It should. And John C. looked at it all too.
That's at 224. 5-4?
Yes.
All right, let's go to page 9. I made the notation on the construction, 1, 2, 3, fourth sentence down, construction, maintenance, repair for the 12-month. I just had the question, what if we exceed the 50,000 in the 12-month? And I guess we,
That would be that exemption that we quoted
That's
earlier,
right.
262,024.
because Commissioner Walker might do something and
Yeah, it
Mr.
kind of,
Peeler might do
right
something.
underneath that, under emergency purchases and exemptions, that's where
Okay.
that would cover that.
All right,
Just wanna clarify again that that requires 72-hour notice to have a commissioner's court hearing for you all to approve it. So in a circumstance where you're at the limit and you're only provider to come and fix the door to the public facility that's gonna be wide open for that 72 hours, you have no way to get it done if you can't get anybody else to come through during that period of time.
But that's the part where we were gonna get with Johnson.
Yeah, we're
Right.
gonna add
Right.
C.
Terminology in there in that
Right.
section about taking that out, so we wouldn't have to worry about that.
on the, below that, on the language, it says requisitioning, dash the requisition. I highlighted the requisitioning party must furnish detailed specifications to the auditor's office. Don't take this as a slam, but the auditor's office is not the subject matter expert on particularly maintenance or IT or road and bridge materials or something, so
Now,
how,
that's just
how,
if we're, that's referring to that form in the back, there's a form back there for requisitioning, that's,
page 26 or 29?
that's not
or-
necessarily just on construction.
Yeah,
That one part was talking about construction maintenance, and road and bridge is different competitive bidding, there's just 25. And then it's talking, this is just saying requisitioning, the requisition party must furnish a detailed specification to us if they want us to secure the
I got
purchasing
you.
for them.
So if you're making the purchase, you have to have very specific information.
Yes,
I
on
got
what
it.
they want. That has
I'm
nothing
good.
to do with construction
Yeah.
or
Okay.
what they're purchasing, that's if they want us to purchase.
That is primarily if we are gonna go out for
For
bids.
bids.
Yeah.
Bidding package.
Okay, I'm good with that. Then I went in, if an emergency purchase order is needed, approval must be obtained first. My comment, or my note is, in a true emergency, time may be of the essence.
And my question was, who has to approve that? Is that gonna be a department head that approves that? Is that gonna be the auditor's office?
It would be the department head.
I think that would be important to clarify.
Yeah, it needs to say that.
It needs to say that.
Right below emergency purchases, you got, the list of services that, you got C is electric, power, gas, and water. Is there an A and B that we left out of there?
Well, that's just giving you some examples. It's actually under that statute, which is up above 262,024, which is what we keep referring to. There's a whole list of them.
So yeah, that 26024 has a laundry list of things that are exempt,
This was just giving you an example.
which we could include in there, but I just, the approval must be obtained first, that was important to us. Is that to be department head?
So we could say approval by department head must be obtained first?
Approval must be obtained from the department.
Approval must be
Obtained
obtained
from the
by
department
department
first.
head
Yeah,
first?
the department head.
Yeah.
You said that.
And then a team purchase order later, or?
Okay, say if a pipe breaks over the weekend,
No, let's not say that.
how's gonna get it fixed?
We can just take out the word purchasing order and say if an emergency purchase is needed.
That's it.
Good.
Is that better?
See, the more we talk about this, the better we get. Thanks, Talita.
You're welcome.
I didn't like that example.
Just want to be a team player, sir. Just be a team player.
Anything else on page 9?
Not gonna work.
Everybody good? Page 10. The one thing I had on, I highlighted internet quotes, because I know a lot of people do. A lot of us shop on the internet. And is a printed page, this is $15.95, if we print that page with the price, would that qualify as the internet quote? Would that be acceptable?
If that's acceptable. Actually, just the invoice. And we can change verbiage in this too. So anything that's under $1,000, it says one quote. The vendor that you're purchasing from is your one quote.
Yeah.
So in that case, your receipt is all you really need.
And that's what I was asking, is that acceptable?
Yes, when
Okay.
you get into the second one and you're going over the 1,000 or the, up to the 5,000, then you would have your invoice from who you purchased from, demand a quote from the.
Gotcha.
Can I offer a suggestion? Could you, Toledo, on A, could you just add a sentence at the end of it that says a receipt is substantial or significant proof of what you just said?
We could put fax, receipt, or internet quote.
You said, Toledo, on item B, you don't have to have two vendors, like, for instance, I may purchase a piece of software that's the only company that makes it.
If that's a sole source, then that's another exemption.
Okay, but like, let's say there's Microsoft Word versus WordPerfect. It's very, very, very similar software, but I've defined that I'm gonna use Microsoft Word. There's only one vendor that makes it.
And that's fine, that's a sole source.
Sole source.
That's the thing again about that's the best value for the county, or what county needs.
Yes, Commissioner Walker?
Just arm locking up, that's all.
Thanks for taking over there, all right, Al.
Just helping you out, you were reading, sir.
Okay. Did that satisfy that?
Well, I got the lowest bidder, is it maybe lowest and best, or lowest, or is it what you're talking about, exceeding minimum specifications? Under the D,
The lower and best.
lowest
Yeah, it
and
could be
best,
the lower or best, or the
or
best
lowest
value.
responsible, or,
And we answered, I think, your question a while ago, which is on this page. It says about the requisitioning. If a department would like the auditor's office to make a purchase on their behalf, the purchase requisition form must be submitted. That's what you were talking about a while ago. Okay, just to be clear.
Toledo, does that include, or does it not include repairs? Is repairs an exemption for equipment?
It's under that
Yeah,
262.
that's what I thought, I just wanted to be clear. Because we have repairs that cost lots more.
I mean, and we can put every single exemption in it, but I think if
No,
you're
I just-
quoting the statute, as long as you go, I don't think
Refer
there's any
back.
need for us to
I think-
list out
I-
all the exemptions. in
I
the
think the
policy.
more we say, the more limits we
Right.
incorporate.
Okay, so we're gonna put the lowest or best value meeting or exceeding minimum specifications will be awarded.
or
Does that
say
sound
lowest
good?
and best.
Can
The
I
lowest
say-
and best?
Language that I actually got from the comptroller's website said it was lowest responsible value.
Lowest
Lowest
responsible
responsible.
value.
And where are we adding that again?
Down in D, the last line,
Value.
sentence.
Which would be great on that County Procurement Act as well.
Yeah.
The lowest responsible value meeting or exceeding the minimum specification? Is that what you wanna say?
I think that's the best way to put it. And it came directly from the comptroller's,
Sounds good to me.
manual.
Mary or Toledo, would you define for me personal property?
Anything that the county owns.
Where are we?
All my tools.
Well, if you read C at the top, from 5,000 to 9,999, if the county is purchasing personal property costing at least 5,000, I'm just,
County owned, to me, that's just a terminology, and it was in a lot of the other procurement manuals throughout the ones that we looked at. So it's not meaning like my personal stuff, it's meaning the county's personal property.
okay,
Like, the county buys a computer for me to
Right.
work on.
That's the county's personal property.
Okay.
That's not Mary's personal property.
okay. Would it be overkill to put in the definitions, personal property is county property? Cause it's not in, I didn't see it in the
We
definition.
can add a definition to personal property.
Well, it needs to say that it's personal property, but excludes real property, which would be land. Cause you need to distinguish. the
There's
difference between-
there's somewhere in here that talks about that too, but I'm not quite sure where it's at.
When you say personal property, that excludes automatically real property.
Yeah.
I just don't want anybody to get the idea that, oh, I can buy some personal property, but I don't have to have it approved if it's only 4,000 or less.
We can add a definition of what the personal property means.
I would appreciate that, thank you.
I got some killer tools.
Okay,
This is mine.
everybody good there?
Is a bass boat personal property?
I just, on a B, is there any reason why we have all of the definitions of how you're gonna get it, phone, fax, internet, email, kind of prevents you from going to the particular store. Like if you're gonna go and you're gonna actually look at the merchandise they have,
You're still gonna get a receipt, right?
Yeah.
And it better not
you
have
would, I
tax
just
on
didn't
it.
understand why we had all these definitions of how we can do it if
That's
we
just
don't
giving you
include it.
examples, that's not saying that you have to supply one of those, it's more so like an example, we could put
It
the
says
ETC.
must. The county must solicit vendors by phone, fax, internet, or email to supply the particular items. So I was just wondering if we could take like all of those definitions out or just add
That's the
in-person
common
or
way
absent.
of getting a quote on something that you're looking to buy. That's
Well-
the most common ways of getting a quote.
Well, can you say, can't the county,
Must solicit vendors.
Can
By
solicit?
example, maybe, or for example?
I think that, I think.
Well, that's only
the word
written
problem
where there's two
is
vendors,
must,
where you
because
need two.
must is implying that you absolutely have to do that.
Yeah.
That's the same thing.
Okay, we can change it to May, but then if you leave it open to May, then that's gonna say, well, it just says May, so I don't have to.
Have to, yeah.
You must provide some type of documentation.
Shouldn't you just say, or in person?
Well, then you don't have.
You don't have
Then you don't have
Then-
anything written or,
So if you're in person, you can get.
We still need a
Yeah,
paper
your
trail.
last sentence is still there. It says in the procurement of these items, the county must document price quoted from at least two vendors. It's still saying you have to have the documentation, but it doesn't say must.
It's whatever, I don't care how y'all wanna change it, but as long as you turn in a receipt, a quote, a photo, if, whether you have the word shall there or not, you still have to do it, so, I don't know, however,
How about after, the word by, just adding in store and then the rest of them? And that way you have the option to go to a store and try stuff too. I think that
so
might
do a
solve.
quote by, so you're saying like where it says number one?
Where you're giving examples, just add in store.
Why don't you make a definition of quote, and that will apply for all four of them, so you don't have to change each one.
Okay.
You wanna add that
Under
one?
your definition of quote, list anything that could be a quote.
Todd and I are big on these definitions.
That's what, okay, I'll add a definition, quote.
Perfect. Thank you. Good.
Thank you, Todd.
Page 11. The inventory and disposition. On October 1st of each year, the department head elected officials shall file with the county auditor's office as an inventory of all property on hand. My question is, why the October 1st, and wouldn't maybe like a July 1st be a better time? And the reason for that, in my thought, department heads, elected officials, and those responsible would have an idea of what their inventory is on hand. And as we're making our budget, then they'd either budget for more or for less or not at all. But if we wait till kind of turning that in on October the,
Put it in any date, I was just saying at the end of the fiscal year,
Yeah.
that way we would have an account going into the new year of what we have.
yeah. But I was just thinking it by the calendar, if I'm aware 1st of July or 1st of August, and I'm thinking, well, I'm gonna budget. Or I've already budgeted something and then October 1st comes and I do the inventory and I go, now why did I budget that? I already got
Change
3.
it to July.
Just a suggestion, I don't, thought.
My suggestion was gonna be that we change it and say by a certain date instead of on a certain date, because my printer dies and I need to replace it. I don't want it hanging around in my office because we don't do this until October 1st. That should be something you should be able to do continuously throughout the year as you're getting rid of.
That's not saying that you can't get rid of it, that's just saying that you have to supply us with an updated list, so we can keep track of it. Because I'm also told that the county is supposed to be keeping track of all the county assets, which we had an outside company come in. Nobody updates us, so this is just a way for us to get an updated list, so we can go
Sure.
in and change our master list.
Yeah.
We do, Al does all of that with Jessica Herrera
No, I'm
continuously throughout the year though.
You do, but not everybody. There's,
No, Al's been working with Jessica Herrera on anything that goes
I
up
know.
for auction.
yeah,
Yeah,
we're talking
we're
about
talking about just
computers.
assets as a whole, we're supposed to keep a
Oh,
record.
that's not being done as we're doing it for auction?
The
I'm
ones
sorry,
that
that's
do-
where I was confused.
The ones that do come through, yes, there are some that we can keep updated stuff with. Mostly it's the big items, the items that are going out for bid or what's considered a capital expense, which is over $5,000, is that right? have an updated list of that. But we don't have an updated list of some of the lower cost items that still have a great deal of value to the county that,
Like a desktop or.
yeah, that's, it's hard to keep up with. So this list doesn't say that you can't. There's a whole other section in here that talks about disposal of property.
Right.
It doesn't say you have to hold on to it until October. It just says you need to give us an updated list so we can
Yeah,
update ours.
what we have and what's good in October.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
basically all that means.
And that was a misunderstanding, because I thought we were doing all of that inventory as we had items go through auction.
Tilly, I thought you had a software for that.
We used that, the WASP program was put in place before I even got here. I'm not even quite sure how, the RCI came in, a year and a half ago and did a countywide, so we do have a asset list that's
we
at
can
least 2
provide
years
to you.
old that we can provide to each department if and when this gets approved. And that way you can go through and update,
Cause
what we have.
we just provided one to Randy Krieger
Yes.
for the fairgrounds, cause we're asking him to take an inventory since a change of ownership out
Yes.
there.
And that includes the smaller items, and what I'm talking about is less than $5,000, which would be your monitors and your computers.
And your printers and scanners.
Yeah.
That
Cell
type of
phone.
stuff. You know,
You're asking, when I find there's no useful life or monitor's gone out, you need to know the asset tag.
If it's
Have
on our
y'all
asset
issued
list,
the
we-
new asset tags for new equipment? Who issued the new tags?
our office can issue asset tags.
Yeah, I'd like to get what we watched done, if you'll have them.
Okay, so we did agree to change the dates?
Well, I mean, I thought out as a suggestion, it seems like if we're aware of what our inventory is prior to the budget being finalized, it might be a little bit more
That would be a
efficient.
way of killing two birds with one stone.
Sure.
So
So-
we can change it to July.
Okay,
And we knew, but by, you know.
Yeah, we put by July
By
first.
July.
By July first of each year, the department heads shall file with county auditor's office.
Al?
Will you provide us a list of, alright, for maintenance, that's different than, cause I have to crawl up in attics and.
okay.
So can you provide a list before July first that what we have
I
on our?
think you can get a list anytime you request one.
Yeah, you can get a list anytime you come to the office and request it. It's just a matter of a drill down.
Yeah.
Well, it might not be a bad idea if we haven't been tracking, the assets as we're auctioning items off. If we haven't been tracking it like that, it might be a good idea to do it now, because how many auctions have we done? A room's full of,
3 rooms.
3 rooms full of assets that
We're
we've
getting
auctioned off.
ready to, but me and Mr. Paskett, I took chairs from Mr. Paskett and we wrote, correct me if I'm wrong, we wrote the silver tag down in your inventory and you went to the auditors. Is that right, Mr. Paskett, or? I don't know,
No,
you got the number.
Yeah, I've got the number. I didn't take it to the auditors.
Okay, you just took it off your inventory?
Yeah.
Okay, so as far as the auction side of the house, the auction side, because I kinda got, I'm doing the auction. But I agreed to do the auction. So what happens to me if I take some, just like, and I'm using Mr. Paskett, cause that's the last person I have taken things from,
Can't hold it no more.
that he wanted to get rid of. He takes he gets the number, that's the department head side. I don't do anything, mine is transport, put in there, and then call the auction company, they come out and do their thing. By the time it gets put in, that's the department head's, responsibility to write it down and how it gets to auditors. That takes us out of the picture as maintenance, and that's between the department head and the auditors.
Okay.
That's how we've been doing it.
Sounds reasonable.
I mean, that's the way we just did it, not, I don't know, what, 4 or 5 months ago, right?
Okay, the one question I have is when property is determined to be surplus salvage, is no longer needed, is unusable or unsafe condition, it should be disposed of as outlined below. My question was for John C., but on the unsafe condition, if we auction something off, what's our liability? Do we have like a used car sticker, as is in this condition,
When
no?
we put it on auction, it is as is where it is.
Okay,
We use gov.deals,
Okay.
gov.deals.com, whatever. It's Simon.
Okay.
I know him. So when we put it up, it is
That's fine.
as is where it is on the website
Okay.
when it's being auctioned off.
And then on E, Mary, can you define designated fund to me? And everybody else probably knows, but I don't.
Designated fund is, whether it's gonna be in a specific department, or say like, we have a separate fund for 911 and a separate fund for the fairgrounds. We have a separate fund for, Road and Bridge, Harvey, you know, so when we get, I wanna read this, what it says, all sales will be handled by the giving of a check or cashier's check, all proceeds will be given to the county treasurer and deposited in the designated fund. That it'll be deposited into the general fund.
Okay. So
Road
if we
and
sell
Bridge,
Mr. Paskett's
Road-
chairs at auction, he doesn't get that money back into his department?
You just request it.
if he can request it.
It is Commissioner's Court.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but-
typically, when we do an auction, we actually come in, we get all this items for us for auction, and request those funds to be brought back to one of our accounts, so we could repurchase.
The
equipment
sheriff's
to
office
replace it.
does that because they have a large amount. Road and Bridge, they do that because they have a large amount.
Sure.
But for all the departments that are in the general
Right.
fund, the money came from the general fund anyway,
Okay,
you know?
okay.
So it goes, you know, if it's a significant amount of money, then yeah, the departments
Yeah.
are gonna request it if they need if they need to purchase something.
Well, I guess, you know, if when it says deposit in a designated fund, if you didn't have one, I can give you
No.
our account, the judge's account, so, okay.
No.
Maintenance account would like it.
We'll give you a list of the funds, so you'll know what we're talking about.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on
Page 12. Is everybody good on the rest of page, on John?
I still have one thing on 11. Believe it, you and I talked about this at some point a month or two ago on the trade-ins. Can you add an exception or some verbiage that there's an exception for the forfeiture stuff that
Did I not put that in there?
our office and the sheriff's office gets? Because, and I'll give you all the example of what I'm talking about.
What area of the,
You're on
that
section
page?
F?
It's F.
Oh, it's F.
The
Page
court
12,
will
yeah.
often award either to our office or the sheriff's office or whatever police agency sees that firearms that were used in commission of
12.
offenses. What we will do is we will keep several of them, and if it's something that our office can use or their office can use, we keep them and can issue them to the officers. But if they're junk guns or something that's not functional, a lot of times what we'll do is trade them to a gun dealer for ammunition or for a gun that can be used for issuing. But that's not something we've ever come to court to do.
I think that's stuff that's strictly with y'all's asset forfeiture.
But-
That does not, the county doesn't have any control over that, that's why it's not in here.
Correct, but the guns are technically awarded by the court to our office, it's not off through
But
forfeiture.
it's not through Grimes County, it's not this court, right?
No, it's district court.
That's why it's not in here. This is just county policy. County policy is trumped by district court.
District, right.
Yeah, but sometimes it can be awarded to
Yeah.
the JP's court too.
That's what I'm
I get
saying.
quite a few of those hearings where I awarded to the sheriff's office.
I think it would be worth writing an exception in there.
We do them all the time in contract law as well.
I just think it would be cleaner if there was something actually written to the effect that that's.
Thank you, Lynn.
Do you wanna come up with the verbiage?
Would you? Okay.
John, verbiage.
The, item number 2 on page 12, this is to the last, it says, such records shall be kept for at least 3 years. My question is, why 3 years? Is that a state mandate or a retention policy?
The minimum, when you have, the Records Act,
Right,
that's the minimum amount that you're required to keep items. Some,
Okay.
depending on what they are, some are even longer. Some are like 1 plus 2 years, current year plus 2, current year plus 3, current year plus whatever, all the way up to, you can never get rid of it.
okay, that's just standard boilerplate here, okay. Anything else on page 12? Page 13, ethical practices. My comment on this, Lucy's not in here any longer, but I thought this ought to be in the employee's handbook.
The whole policy.
The whole policy, whether you're dealing with purchasing or not, it ought to just, all of our employees ought to be held responsible for ethical practices. And then it just applies to, but I don't have any problem with it being in the purchasing policy as a reminder.
There, can I just make one mention? You flipped really fast there, the page 12.
Yep.
On the vendor relations, there's nothing in there that really provides for, like, bad,
I think there's a
poor workmanship, where you're not gonna bring a vendor back in, because the way that they've done the work has been dangerous to public safety in the past. And this, it just continuously says that, that will provide that opportunity, where in reality, sometimes, like, we don't wanna provide the opportunity to, give us a quote.
Not to, I mean, if you've got, you can document that certain vendor, that's the part that the department head gets to do their own discretion. Now, if there was an actual purchasing agent, then that person would keep a vendor file listing of complaints from each department, so they know not to use that. But if you know a specific vendor that's not doing good, you don't have to use them.
Okay.
That's
Well,
where you
and
get
it
your,
would be beneficial if you let the auditor's office know
Sure.
about this vendor so that we can, make a notation in the vendor file that we may not wanna use this vendor anymore.
Yep. Good.
There was just nothing in here, it just,
Yes, sir.
Before, when I was involved in purchasing, we would have approved vendor list. You would pre-approve vendors, and you would have a list. This is who you go through for your bids. If you had a vendor that could not perform, then you would be removed from that list, and you would no longer seek bids from that person. Or if they submitted one, you'd say, you know better, you're off the list, you're out. And you would have your approved vendor list.
and if we ever go to the point to where we have a countywide purchasing agent, that's something that that person would
Yeah.
take
They
control of
monitor and
and
maintain.
monitor it.
And then hopefully, all the department heads know who their good vendors are.
Right.
Can we jump over to page 15? I don't think there's anything on the ethical
I have
procedure.
just one real quick,
Okay, Michelle, you only get 2 more calls.
I
All right.
know. Just really quick, under the gratuity section, there's a lot of, our vendors that you'll get, you can get a water bottle or whatever when you order this particular item, say for instance through Quill or whatever. I typically save those up and then I have a stack in my office actually right now for the next time we have some county activity that we can donate then for the prizes. And this would prevent things like that.
Donate as prizes for what?
Like the Christmas party or whatever.
I think it says it is shared amongst.
Yeah, if it's being shared amongst the other departments, it's not an issue.
Here we go.
Yeah, that's it.
Or less acceptable if shared with the entire staff and will not offend the prohibition unless it appears to influence a purchasing decision, so.
Where's my Snickers?
I think we're okay? All right. Well, the one everybody's been waiting for, page 15, credit card policy. Okay, I guess, Madam Treasurer, we're gonna let you take the hot seat now? All right.
I take the hot seat all the time.
All the time, all right. 262.011 and following allows the auditor's office to establish the credit card rules subject to Commissioners Court approval as follows. On the purchasing of the card, anybody, where it says definitions, purchasing card, number of cards to be issued to be determined on a case-by-case situation, and that determination becomes from the department head and the treasurer's department, is that right?
It could be just from the treasurer's department because she is over the purchasing cards.
So if she were to deny a department head or an elected official a card,
She's not gonna deny a department head, but it's the staff.
Well, I mean, don't we further say that the department head has to approve if a staff member is going to get a card?
They should, if it's, necessary.
So I guess my point is the number of,
Convenience, necessary.
the number of cards to be issued to be determined on a case-by-case situation, and that case-by-case would not, you wouldn't be dealing with subordinates of a department head, you'd be dealing with the department head or the elected official, wouldn't you?
Right.
Okay. Or was that all right, Mary? Oh, okay.
Okay,
And
you
then
got
I-
hands flying up.
When I put okay, and then good on the last one. Anything on 15? John?
I just wanted to clarify what was being said. So if a department head asks for one of their employees to have a card be issued to them, that will happen. Is that right?
I would think it would, wouldn't it? Why wouldn't
Depending
it?
on how many's out there in that department.
And this is the thing.
Easy. There's a moan from the crowd.
So let me come up,
The reason I'm saying this is if y'all were on our end and y'all have to look at the building when it comes in and how thick a lot of these are, there's a lot of them that are not accountable for using their plastic. They pull the card out and then, oh, I don't have a receipt. You know, and it's sometimes hard to get the information out of people.
Okay.
So if I can come into an agreement with the department head, then we'll move forward. If I can't, then we'll have to bring it before the court meeting.
Well, I think that's fair. Talita, what were you gonna say?
There's a possibility with, okay, so how many employees do we have?
173, not counting elected officials.
Janet, how many credit cards do we have? Do you know, off the top of your head?
I think it's 117.
So we have 117 credit cards out there issued to various people. So one of the things that we were trying to do, which we can address some of that down in here later, is going to a specific department, let's say the sheriff's office, and say, we're gonna order 10 credit cards that say Grimes County SO 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that might be too many, that might not be enough, I'm just using that number.
Sure.
Don't hold me to it. Then it's gonna be the chief deputy or whoever's gonna be over the purchasing, which I think might be Cook. He's gonna be responsible for signing that card out to whoever he thinks he needs.
Okay.
But ultimately, he'll be responsible for getting all the stuff into the treasurer's office. That way we don't have, so depending on the number of employees, could possibly determine how many credit cards you have. So if you have a department that only has 5 or 6 employees, well, not all 5, 6 employees are gonna have a credit card. You might get 3
Right.
that your department head is going to be able to sign out.
One does that work for our office? One credit card for the DA's office would definitely work. We have 3 credit cards. We have one that we use that Laura Zaragoza keeps in her possession at all times in the office, and I go get it from her if I need to use it. And my 2 investigators have a credit card because of the vagaries of what we do for a living. We're beyond.
I don't think that sounds unreasonable.
And that's why it has that in there. It says on a case by case.
Yeah. Okay.
because like
Case
my
by case.
department, I'm the only one with a credit card. My girls don't go do anything, comes to me. So they wouldn't issue the credit cards to my
Yeah.
department,
Well-
and I'm the only one that
I
needs
have
it.
a
But I
credit
don't-
card, and if my girls go to a conference without me, I give them my credit card, they use it and bring it back.
That's why we put in there to be determined on a case by case.
Okay, Todd?
Now you
I
show
think
up.
it,
John, we don't need you now, we're almost done.
I think it needs to be openly decided by the department head. They know exactly what their operations is of that department.
Well, I think it's stated that way.
Well, it's saying case by case
No, it
basis.
doesn't say that.
But that's saying that the treasurer's office is ultimate deciding factor, which have told us, well, we're taking our credit card. But the fact is, we run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I know the investigators at the DA's office do.
Okay.
There's times where we're out, there's emergency purchases we have to buy, and I sure don't want to have to wake up every week at 3 o'clock in the morning to run out and go fill somebody's gas car up, because they couldn't get back to the office because they've been on calls all night on the north end for 5 hours and can never make it back. I mean, I know the argument is, well, y'all have a gas tank here. Yes, we do. But not all the times that we're actually able to make it back to Anderson, and sometimes it's not sufficient. Sometimes we literally have to stop and say, call the complaint back, I have to make a 20-mile trip to go get gas, tell them I'll be back for their incident in an hour. Of course, when we show up an hour later, how do you think that citizen appreciates, how do you think that citizen appreciates how we're handling business
So-
and what the county's doing?
So the number of cards to be issued to be determined by department heads? Well, I mean, Janice,
Well, with the sheriff's office, I'm in agreement to issue them data cards with those officers that have a Citibank card. Because initially, when these credit cards were issued, it was for emergency use only. Well, a lot of that is buying ammo, and I thought y'all bought ammunition for the whole jail, you know, for the officers.
All supplies typically are for the sheriff's
Okay.
office, yeah.
And I understand that y'all have to make purchases for hotels whenever you go to seminars, I agree with that. But, you know, I can give you the data cards in place of the Citibank cards, because most of those officers are only limited to $150.
But not all the time, everything that they buy.
Do they
Y'all
all
say
patrol?
the data cards only used for certain items, it's not.
They'll be
rated
used
for-
for repairs.
But we never know what's gonna happen.
What are you
We
talking?
could be, we could be,
James, Comdata won't work. I had an officer broke down with an inmate in a car in a vehicle that exploded at 700 miles from here, in Oklahoma.
Well,
I've got
that's-
another officer in Louisiana who's got to stay overnight now due to weather. I can't have him a
Well,
Comdata
that's
card
where
because I've
you-
got people all over the country working 24/7.
But that's where, Talina was talking about the generic
That you would
card.
sign out, you know that you're gonna transport somebody that day, okay, so that transport officer can have that card. You're gonna have,
That card, she's saying that my card, but if I've got
No.
T-Bone, Junior,
No.
Jim, and
no,
8 people on
we're
the
not
road.
saying that. First of all, the data card, we need to implement that if people are buying, because if you're buying gas with the county credit card,
The taxes are.
the taxes are included in it. And when you go through the data, you get a discount. And so it's gonna save the county money ultimately on fuel. She's not saying that you're not gonna have any way to buy fuel. Whoever does not have a county credit card, who doesn't need it on a daily basis, and has a county vehicle, will have a data card where you can buy fuel, do miscellaneous repairs, and certain types of like car washes, tire rotations, that kind of stuff. If you have a transport officer, you know you're gonna send to Louisiana or Kentucky or wherever, you're gonna give them a county credit card that David Cook's gonna have 10 of them that he can sign out. I'm giving this to whoever,
But-
he's responsible for that card.
But sometimes we don't know every situation that they're gonna be going out of town. You know, we can have a deputy at 2 o'clock in the morning respond to a call, catch a mental subject, and they have to go clear across Austin or whoever has a bed that night.
Russ.
You know, we gotta take Russ, I mean, that's a long distance, we gotta take juveniles all over the place. I mean,
Judge
there's one
Underwood,
size fit all, because I have 5 people that
One-
only work Monday through Friday, it just doesn't work for us.
one at a time. Judge Underwood, you're next.
Well, I just wanted to implement and explain about data. Not every place carries data. You know, if he was in a situation, he was out of state, you may have to go in, ask the clerk inside if they accepted data. Maybe 1 out of 100 does.
Yeah,
It's
they're
not
very
like-
limited.
it- Yes.
Oh,
A major truck stop more than likely would. There may not be 2 or 3 vendors in our county that carries data.
That's right.
Okay?
Madam DA, then
That
John.
was my point.
Okay,
So
John?
that would
In Walker
nullify
County.
these folks being able to use a data card. You
Okay.
just don't know.
John?
And I just would like to add, because it keeps getting brought up about the data and the waste of money on taxes. There have been instances, and I personally have had this situation, where someone has gone and asked for a data card and been told that they could only get a data card if they were willing to submit or turn in their Citibank card, which most of us are not going to do. So to say that we're not willing to use it is not a fair statement. It's being forced into a choice that we shouldn't have to make.
I got a comment, Judge. Montgomery County is a lot bigger than us. They don't have any county credit cards. None.
Neither does Washington County.
But
Well, I will
Montgomery
say that
does.
Walker County issues a fund to every employee in their county.
Yeah, their maintenance guy just had one at
Well,
real place.
there are-
Yeah, I don't know.
They've got 24.
Please, one at a time. you know, the reason we're having this discussion is to figure out what's gonna work best for Grimes County, okay? So, whether we give everybody a card or a few people a card and some people 2 cards, that's what we're trying to work out and figure out here. So I understand. Mary?
Judge, I provided each of the commissioners a handout of some spreadsheets. These are all of the invoices that were charged on the Citibank card from October 1, 2016 through September 30, 2017. This is a whole year's worth of charges. We also have, we always have to provide to the outside auditor our top 10 vendors. Well, when I worked on that list and I saw Citibank was number 11, I was dumbfounded because $172,000 in 1 year with Citibank and only 66,000 or 68,000 was for travel.
But if it's in your budget, why does it matter? If you're checking to make sure that you're using the money and it's in your budget before you use that card, someone explain to me how that matters.
It matters because a lot of people lose their receipts and they can't turn them in. And the thing of it is, when you get a bill in this thick and you've got to match up all the invoices to it, it takes 2 or 3 days because you're calling, asking people for their invoices. Oh, well, I can't find it. Well, then you gotta get an affidavit into us. Well, then we have to call them back 2 or 3 times to get them in here with that information. I'm blown away by the information that you will see in these spreadsheets. I really am. I'm blown away by it. I don't think that, it seems to me that not all departments, because you can look through this and see the departments that I feel are abusing it, which I did not name any of them. But you can look through this and you can see and make a decision for yourself based on this information. Are they using it because it's convenient? Are they using it instead of calling Quill and ordering their office supplies from Quill, which will send us a bill? I've got a real concern at the jail with $5,500 being spent on the Citibank card for inmate food.
That's because we did reimbursements to the county. We don't do it anymore, we just let the county pay for it. We used to put it on the card and do a reimbursement because we could boil it
No,
online.
no, y'all don't ever reimburse us for the bread.
I know you told me.
Oh, the bread?
It was just bread, Mary, it wasn't just.
I don't think it's
See,
all
the other
bread.
churches I reimbursed y'all for, y'all complained, so I just quit doing it, so now the county's just eating that money.
No.
Again, I just don't understand
Huh?
why it's a problem if it's not, if it's legal. You're not using the purpose card for anything that's illegal, and it's within your budget, and it's necessary for your office. Why is that a problem? The county commissioners can set a policy of what you can use those cards for. There's no limit in the policy currently that I'm aware of that says it can only be used for travel.
There's not a policy that says that, but it is suggested that it is used for travel and only for emergency situations where another avenue of purchasing something is not available. That is the only way that the county is gonna have a handle on what is purchased. According to the law, a purchase order is supposed to be gotten before any purchase is made. We've gotten very slack on that, and it has, I mean, the credit card bill has gone from this to this, and it's ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. And, you know,
There's one particular jail expense which comes around every week, and it's with Brookshire Brothers. It's for bread and gluten-free food products for the jail. It runs anywhere somewhere between $84 and maybe $120 a week. It's done on a credit card. We don't have an account, they're not gonna accept an account. I wish they would, but the actual cost saving from using Brookshire Brothers on the price of bread, on a loaf of bread to the jail, makes it definitely worth using Brookshire Brothers.
So you haven't found a vendor or contacted any vendors that can
Not one
provide
that's
you?
gonna
And they
give us
won't
the,
deliver to us, we've tried that too.
Well, you said they won't, work with us and provide an invoice
and I've asked for that in the past, that particular vendor, and,
from Brookshire Brothers?
they just wanna deal with,
Cash or credit
cash
card?
or credit.
Years ago, they would deliver bread, now they can't, so we can't get it delivered invoiced anymore.
No, fingerprints, you know, we have fingerprint checks that we have to do that,
Well,
they
let's-
only take credit cards.
Let's go back to Andrea's question.
We- we
That,
have-
that,
And we have to have the discretion just for a myriad of things, where the only currency they'll accept is not Bitcoins, it's credit cards.
Well, the county used to benefit because I could order certain food products that inmates eat on a credit card, and then I could write a check that y'all approved to reimburse the county through commissary. And I was told to quit doing that, so now the county's just paying for that 100%. The inmates were paying for it, now we're paying for it, they don't know.
No, if it's going to the commissary, you should be writing a check out of commissary
The
for it.
companies, we could get the things that we could legally buy, we couldn't write them a check, we had to make payment before they would send it, and then the county would pay for it, and I would do a reimbursement
What
to
about
the
the
county
Walmart
to give y'all the
charges?
money back. I can't get
Wasn't
some
there-
things at Walmart.
There was a one that somebody just did recently that I think was a Walmart, somebody went and bought some stuff for the commissary and then reimbursed it.
We,
That-
at
that-
Walmart, we can't.
That did happen.
And prescription medications, we can charge the inmates to reimburse it too. when we pay
No, but
for it.
I'm saying y'all use the county credit card to buy something at Walmart and then reimburse with the commissary checking account.
Just
So
to-
Right,
the
that's what I was told not to do anymore,
Yes.
was reimburse with the commissary
That's what-
check-in, so I quit doing that. So
Right,
that's
because you can
thousands of
take the
dollars I
commissary
used to
check
get
and
back.
go buy at Walmart
Yeah, at
directly.
Walmart I can.
That
but
means on the ones that you,
Some things I can't.
on the ones that you can, you need to use your commissary checking account.
We do.
If you have an instance where you can't,
And the number of times,
then you can be reimbursed. But that's a
They can
handful of
reimburse
times.
us.
Yeah.
it's happened maybe once or twice in the last 2 years that I can think
But I
of.
don't do any reimbursements now, as I was told to quit using the card, so now we just pay for all that on a billing account, so I can't reimburse that.
Janice Trent?
If the department heads, now I'm talking about the department heads, or the elected officials, will sign and agree to make sure I get all receipts in a timely manner, where Heather doesn't have to call. I don't mean to call y'all and say, I need your receipt. You know you've used that card, get me the receipt, bring it to us the next day. I don't have a problem with it. And I'll let you have the Comdata cards, but you use it, this is not our money.
Understood.
This belongs to the taxpayers of Grimes County, and it's not money that grows on trees. And we're just trying to be good stewards, and we all are looking forward to a new building. So we just need to work together and make it happen. I don't have a problem with anybody having credit cards, and I don't have a problem with John having special needs for San Antonio and stuff like that. But I just want them to be a little more, help me, help y'all, is all I'm asking. Because when I have to get upset and send an email because Heather sent one and nobody responded, and I have to send one, that's not the way it should be. And everybody knows she handles accounts payable. And it, you know, y'all have your business, you have the jail, you know how it runs, you have
Well,
your JP. and-
Isn't the motivator for the individual to get the receipt to you so they can indeed get reimbursed?
Well, it's,
Oh,
It's
Well,
so
they're being
many-
reimbursed, this is the actual
This is
credit
the
card
credit
policy.
card.
Actual card.
But
What's the-
there is a time frame if we keep going in this section, where receipts and stuff are required, you know, that we're requesting to
Right,
be turned in.
and I want them taped at bottom and top on an 8.5 by
Right,
11
I mean,
shiny
they
gloss.
took the time to use that card, take the time to help us out and help y'all, is all I'm asking. And don't use it if you're through Anderson and you're supposed to fill up over there at the jail, don't drive to Buc-ee's to fill up.
Well, can I ask this question? And I found it helpful when I was losing receipts. There's a app that is a scanner.
You can take pictures of it and
Take a
send it to
picture
us.
and send it to you.
That's what the game warden does when he uses it.
You
Okay.
can send it to
But
us.
my other question was back to a point that I think I heard Officer Wren use was the okay, you said if they would take responsibility of it, rather than having to turn in one card for the other card, is what I heard one of the issues were. And then
I
you
was
have
referring-
those that don't even have
I was
com
referring to a
cards.
different department, I really wasn't referring to.
But there's still that problem, whereas what would be wrong with if you had somebody that's constantly buying fuel and they're out and about, give them a com card
Right.
for fuel or whatever, and then they use their other card for their travel and conferences or whatever you wanna limit them to. But to have to give up one or the other, they're not willing to wanna give up one or the other.
Commissioner's Court needs to set the limit on what can be purchased on the credit card.
But even still, I'm still on that com data
Well,
card.
And I did not know that they were not accepted at all places. I was told that they were. Okay, I didn't know that until.
It is limited,
recently.
actually. Michelle?
I was just gonna comment that there's gonna be so many exceptions and so many oddities for all of the different departments because of the variety of work that everybody does, that maybe instead of focusing on the number of cards and the types of things that we can purchase, that we focus on the policy on how it's revoked. So that if you're not following the policy, you can take the cards from that particular person. You don't have to hear everybody's issue today, because then there probably needs to be something in here where that person can contest, or their department head can contest the fact that you wanna revoke the card, and then all of that can come back before Commissioner's Court. Instead of trying to get everybody's exception in there, focus on the solution to the problem that we don't currently have, which is the ability to revoke the card.
Which is in the policy later on.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think overall, it's the minority messing things up. The majority of the people that are using their card responsibly and turning in their receipts.
Well, I would agree with you, except that Mary's saying that the credit card is that thick, and that, I mean, I don't know if that's an exaggeration, or if that's a reality, but that, no, I trust you. I do think that's a little bit thick.
Well, back to what I was saying, and I was alluding to, we have a new employee that hadn't been here that long. I call her new, Marissa. She never received a com card. She has a credit card, so whereas you didn't really know that you could.
No, I was told to use, I had Debbie Stringer's old com data card, which is now shut down, and I was told to use my Citibank card for fuel.
The com data card came up when we were kind of drafting this policy as an alternative to maybe not having so many credit cards out there. And if it can be utilized so that it can save the county money, so that's probably why not everybody who has a county vehicle is aware of the terminology com data, because we started working on this back in October, I think, and that's kind of where it came up. I know the state of Texas uses the com data, and they've never really had an issue using it in a lot of rural counties, so I'm not quite sure why some of the vendors would not be able to accept it. Com data is one of the ones that the Texas game wardens use, and they're all over in remote areas, and that's their only way that they really have to get fuel.
Well,
is
what
with their com data card.
What I was suggesting, if they had the two, where it's acceptable to, at that particular location, to use the com
It would be
data
the
card,
first preference is
use
to
the
use the
com
com
data
data
card, and then you're not charged all of the interest or whatever we're so concerned with the credit cards.
Right.
But to give them an option of one or the other, may not be working. Whereas if they had an option to say, hey, I can use the com data card here, I'll use that instead of using my credit card, that would cut some of the purchases on the credit card.
Also, those who are in town and they know they've gotta go run errands all over where, and they get in their car, they need to check their gas tank. And if they're here in Anderson, they need to go to the sheriff's office and fill up before they go doing all their errands all over everywhere, so that they're not buying gas all over the world. If they're right here in Anderson and they're getting in their car, they can look at that gas tank and see if they're gonna need gas. And you can't tell me they don't know whether or not they're gonna need gas before the end of the day.
But once again, everybody may not know that.
Oh, well, most of the ones that drive do, the ones that drive a lot.
Okay.
I wouldn't know how to even go over to the sheriff's department.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
I've never
Mary Ann
did
and I
that.
don't go there either, just saying.
Salita?
I think what it is
I
just
don't charge it on my credit
whether or
card
not you
either.
have one credit, you have a Comdata card, a credit card, or you have access to the bulk fuel. Obviously, if you have access to the bulk fuel readily, you need to try to use that. Second guess would be use your Comdata card. Third would be use county credit card if you have it. But back to what we originally started on, because we kind of got way off track. The definition about how many cards can be issued, the number of cards to be issued to be determined by department heads, elected official, and treasurer. I think those three those department head or elected official and the treasurer's office need to come to an agreement on how many cards they need to be issued, only because she is over the county,
No.
she oversees all the county funds when it comes to, the bank accounts and the credit cards and stuff like that. So I
And
would,
when there's not an agreement,
then you could go before Commissioner's Court.
Come to the court and resolve it.
that was my suggestion,
Yeah.
just to add that in.
So are you gonna add that language,
Like,
Salita?
but if agreement cannot be reached, it would be, Commissioner's Court's
Okay,
approval
all right.
or decision.
Purchasing card, you said something I wasn't aware of. We have bulk fuel. Is that is that the dyed fuel?
Sheriff's office. It's regular road use gasoline.
We just
Okay.
have a gas tank at our. in our
But y'all have a
office.
record of who gets that or who doesn't
They
get it?
issue
You need a
cards.
fuel card, which is issued by our office to, for it to dispense fuel to your
Okay,
vehicle.
so you have a fuel card, you have a Comdata card, and you have a credit card.
The fuel card is specific to county vehicles.
Gotcha. And the Comdata is used at the particular locations and accept, and they do not charge us the highway tax fee.
No.
And the sheriff's office once a month, they pull the report and give us the report of the usage from all the different people that gotten gas over there. And then we do a journal entry and charge that department and credit the sheriff.
I think,
It's the most expensive gas in town.
I was gonna say, that's my concern, is we don't, we go to the sheriff's department, we don't know what we're paying, and then you look at your budget and you're out of, fuel. It happened to Cat where
Well,
they
that
would
was,
go
that
back.
wasn't because of it was expensive, that was a computer error glitch on the system and it was charging the wrong
But
amount.
they still half the time charge more than what it could be at a gas station.
It's because the sheriff's office uses a particular higher grade. For instance, because I think theirs is the 89 or something, it's called a special blend, I found that out.
It's high
And that's
octane
why,
for the
it's a
perceived
higher,
performance
yeah, right. So, we too were using the sheriff's department's bulk fuel, we've got the card. Road and Bridge has their own at their own barns, however, Mr. Harry, and some of the others were getting fuel from the sheriff's department. When Cat brought it to our attention that yes, hey, look at this cost, I did the research and did find out, because yes, they're using a higher performance than just your 87% ethanol or whatever it is. So yes, you have to make yourself aware of what you're purchasing. So yeah, and we had to do that. That's why the cost is higher, yes.
Well, is there any way we can make, a bulk purchase of, the regular octane for the
Well,
other?
Road and Bridge does.
You
for
do?
our
Do you have a
yes.
card, type set up for it, or
Well,
is it
theirs
just
are
strictly?
at their barns.
It's just strictly at the
No,
barn?
it's
But
not
they're
here in
ours.
Anderson.
Well, we'll lose money in the long run putting the cheap bottom line
Right.
stuff
I
in
mean,
heavy.
that's-
Yeah, it
when
could,
Yeah,
they're
couldn't do
lower.
that, no,
Yeah,
but
it's
I wonder if there's
different
any way that
regardless.
the
Other
county,
departments use that.
county can go in and have us, have a bulk system for county vehicles, for the regular octane,
We,
for any of the other vehicles.
we do in Road and Bridge at the two barns. Certainly you could add a regular, supply at the sheriff's department, people that are located here in Anderson, it's gonna cost some money to do that, but that's another.
Something we can look into.
Todd, I got a question for you. I don't know if it was resolved your credit card issues or not yet, but when your patrolmen are out there on a shift, do they normally report back to the sheriff's department every day, or do they, if they're on the north end of the county, and they live on the north end of the county, they'll go to the house, right, when their shift ends?
Yeah, but generally, they will come to the office a couple times throughout their shift.
Well, I'm kinda in response to what Mary was talking about, when they get in the vehicle and they see they've got a half a tank and they know they're gonna be out all night, maybe they could fuel up at your facility, but if they're on the north end of the county and their shift's in, then they go directly home, and they get up in the morning and say that we only got an eighth of a tank of fuel, they've got to go somewhere to get fuel rather than drive all the way back to Anderson. I just wonder if that's a problem.
No, because when they come to the office, they
Yeah.
do fill up. And it all depends on what the situation is too, because sometimes you can come to the office and meet somebody and just wrap up with them, and the next thing you know, you're getting a call, and it's an emergency call, and you don't have time to veer off and stop and get out and fill up your tank and everything. You gotta go, and then you get out to that call, then you're real low on gas, then you gotta go somewhere else and get gas and come home.
We've had vehicle pursuits that
But-
ended in Houston.
I mean, we had a vehicle
those
pursuit where
are-
the actual, one of the officers actually stopped and got gas, and the pursuit kept going, circled around and came back, and he got back in it.
That's more the exception than the rule. You know, as a rule.
But no, they do come to the office and
Yeah.
they do get gas there. I mean, if you watch our videos of the gas tank, officers are coming in constantly getting gas.
Well, I guess my
We run
question,
through a couple tanks there a
my
day.
question, have we compromised or come to some kind of solution with you
No, we
guys?
make every effort to get our gas here.
One of the things you're seeing, Commissioner, that she brought up, the deputies getting fuel in Plantersville or Beat Eyes, or sometimes Madisonville, I know they've seen that in Rounds Prairie. I know for a fact that Vernon, we can make it back to Beat Eyes on most of our Tahoes without getting fuel. That's as far as we can make it on an inmate transport, which we do a lot down there. The same thing for Bradshaw, on our big van, we can make it back 0 miles empty at Rounds Prairie, a few miles empty in Beat Eyes, and same thing going south with at Plantersville. We don't have vehicles that let us go to Vernon and Bradshaw on these 700-mile round trips without getting fuel. And a lot of times, we can make it within 20 miles of the office daily. You may see this for Travis Huey, he just can't make it all the way to the office.
I guess
He's buying
purpose-
small amounts of fuel in random places to get back to the office, and that's why you're seeing $10 in Beat Eyes or $8 in Plantersville, because he fills up at the office. We just can't make it all the way back on a round trip transport. And he's out, I've got several of these guys out every day. They go sometimes out of the state, obviously they get fuel somewhere else in Oklahoma, and they can make it all the way back to Madisonville, and they gotta fill up again, and you're seeing that, weekly, and that's the reason why.
Well, I guess what we're trying to achieve here is to reduce credit card purchases to a degree, not just use them indiscriminately every day for minor purchases. I mean, try to consolidate these, and instead of making a trip to Walmart every day to get a loaf of bread, go down there and buy 10 loaves, and do it once a week. I'm just making an example. But let's try to reduce credit card policies so we don't have so many receipts that she has to go through. And that's what we're trying to achieve here. And I don't know how we're gonna do that or how we're gonna go about it, but that's what we're working toward.
Kalina?
So, I mean, we could sit in here for like several more hours
Yeah.
on all of these what ifs and stuff. We understand that circumstances are gonna arise, and there's gonna be times where you're gonna have to use the credit card. But like Commissioner was saying, it's to minimize the usage of the credit card that's not necessary. It takes a lot of work on not just one department when we have to go through all of these credit card transactions to make sure that everything balances out, to make sure there's no taxes. Not only does Heather go through every single transaction, but I go through every single transaction on top of doing, all of the other stuff that's required for me to do by my boss. Instances are gonna come up, and like John C. has said before, this is just to get us going. We can try it out. We're not saying that, the first time you mess up, we're gonna take your credit card away. I mean, that's not how it goes. Ultimately, it's the commissioner's court's decision on who can really have a credit card when you want to all boil it down to it. Anytime the department heads can't agree, you take it before commissioner's court. That's one of the reasons why you guys are established. So So the whole purpose of this is just to get us compliant with the statute, get us there to where we're being proactive instead of reactive, if and when the state comes down on us, or the feds come down on us for grant purposes, that we are in compliance with what we need to do. That's the whole sole purpose of this purchasing policy. It's not to say that our office is gonna be in control of your office, or we're gonna be able to tell you you can do that, or, that's not what this is all about. There are different, requirements within this purchasing policy. It states right here on that same page that we're on, right above the definition, it says cardholders must remember that this is just a payment method. The credit card is just a payment method, and that you should be basically following all aspects of the purchasing procurement manual.
Right.
So this is to be included into this, which means you still need to, even though you're using the credit card, you still need to get your quotes or your written quotes, depending on the dollar threshold. I just want us to be in compliance is basically all that I want us to do. But if we sit here, we've already been going for 2.5 hours, and we go through every page and everybody has a what if, we're gonna be here all day. And that's fine if that's what y'all wanna do, but this is just a stepping stone for the county to get us in the right direction. That's all I gotta say about that.
The reason why everybody has such a concern, and we keep coming back to, we can go back and change it later. But in the meantime, we're bound to the what ifs. And as soon as you get another page in, or maybe even on this page, is saying that if it's an unauthorized purchase, that you're gonna be responsible. And then the firm, it even goes into taking it directly from your paycheck. So if you're putting all of that language and restriction in there, and there are exceptions that haven't been addressed, or it isn't, we don't move past all of the different exceptions and leave it to a process to revoke the card, then nobody knows whether or not they're making an unauthorized purchase, and whether or not they're gonna have to pay for the county item that they were trying to purchase on their own.
But ultimately, that's gonna be a commissioner's court decision. The
After
treasurer's
you've already
office,
made the
this is their policy. This is their policy. This is not the treasurer's office policy. This is not the auditor's office policy. This is Grimes County Commissioner's Court. Obviously, the auditor's office can't say we're gonna dock somebody's payroll. Treasurer's office says they can't dock somebody's payroll without going through Commissioner's Court. Commissioner's Court has the ultimate say-so on whether that certain item was considered a county purchase or not, is the way that's the way I interpret it. Maybe it's because I went through a lot of different purchasing classes and I can easily understand it better than others. I don't know, but I don't see this as it saying that this really gives us the authority to take away the credit cards. Really, it's Commissioner's Court has a decision whether or not we can take away credit cards.
But it doesn't say that.
It said that.
And I think that's all anybody wants, is the clarification that we're not gonna have an argument that isn't going to have an option to come back. I mean, if you consider something unauthorized, then if I wanna contest that,
That's all
We go
that's
before
left.
Commissioner's Court.
I'd like to get it
right,
tonight.
but that's not in the policy. I think that's all we're saying, is there is nothing in the policy that says what you
Isn't there
just.
something in there underneath the revocation process or something about, I could have swore there was
I
something
was
in
looking
there.
for that.
What page is the revocation on?
I didn't even see that.
I was looking for it too.
It's, I think it's part of the actual form, I don't think it's really.
It talks about
Unauthorized use.
disciplinary action on page 18, but it doesn't say what the disciplinary action is.
Oh, okay.
That's what we're referring to.
Yeah, a cardholder who makes unauthorized purchases or carelessly uses the purchasing card may be liable for the total dollar amount of such unauthorized purchases plus any administrative fees charged by the bank or other associated costs in connection with the misuse. The cardholder will also be subject to disciplinary action.
Okay, and it has the key term right there, may. It has may, which means, doesn't mean shall.
Yeah, but it's still,
But
their money may be taken from them.
in the last sentence that says will be subject to disciplinary action, that's an absolute.
Okay, well, we can change the will to may too.
And who makes that decision?
That would be Commissioner's Court. We can put in there,
So Commissioner's Court will make the decision
Yeah.
on an individual employee, not the department head?
if it comes to a disputed item, that's only if the credit card's gonna be revoked.
I'm talking about the disciplinary part. Who makes the decision on the disciplinary part?
That would be the department head or the
That's what-
elected official.
That's what it should be,
Not the commissioners.
correct?
Was there the?
Commissioner's Court
Okay.
makes the decision on the money and whether the card ultimately revoked. The disciplinary action would be made by the department head.
Okay.
Okay,
Or
but
elected
let's say
official.
we have somebody that, the treasurer's office feels is abusing the use of the card.
then the treasurer ought to go to the department head and say, hey,
And if she does that, and the department head says, I don't care, I want that person to have the card
They
anyway,
can't agree, it goes to court.
Goes to court.
Then
And
it
it needs
goes
to
to
be written in
court.
the policy that it goes to the commissioner's court. There should be an appeal process for the commissioner's court, written in the policy.
and I think we already, I mean,
We covered that.
I thought we talked about
that's
that.
general knowledge, and that's the way it works, because I don't have any authority over Janice, and Janice doesn't have any authority over me, and if we can't agree, then we come before the court, I recuse myself, and the four of these folks then make a decision. Am I right or am I wrong?
you don't have to recuse yourself.
I'm sorry?
You don't have to recuse yourself.
Well, I probably wouldn't good conscience.
But I think it needs to be outlined in this policy, because you're gonna give a piece of paper to employees and say, sign this, you're responsible to know this and use it, and the average employee may not know how the actual county government works. They're here to do a job, and they go in and work and get paid. They don't know the concept of, well, county government, well, Toledo's the expert, and she knows that it's not this. They don't know that.
And it's up to the department head to school their people that's under them what the policy is.
But the ones that read this aren't gonna sign it, cause it's so vague, we need everything outlined.
I mean, it doesn't hurt anything to add the language that there's an appeal process through the
It does
commissioner's
not.
court.
It does not hurt.
To make it very clear.
I think Toledo's scribing it in now.
Janice, on page 16, in the middle of the page there, that pretty much takes care of your, documentation. Yeah, any person who makes unauthorized purchases carelessly uses the card or fails to turn in the appropriate documentation in a timely manner will be liable for the total dollars. They'd have to check, they don't turn in a receipt.
Well, I have to talk to the department head for that. Okay. I think that's,
And what's the time
What the
manner?
timely manner, 24 hours or 10?
well, we've had people, and I've actually done it once. We've had, because my credit card, my personal credit card had the same 4 digits as my county credit card, but I've got that changed. I pulled it out and I accidentally used it to buy gas, which I never did. I reimbursed, and John's done this too. He's pulled it out because his card was the same color as the county card.
And I keep all of them in my pocket together. A human person makes
It
a human
happens.
error
It happens.
from time to
And,
time.
Okay.
and a lot of times, it's happened 3 or 4 times, 6, 7 times to people.
I'm not talking about that, I'm talking about people who don't turn in a receipt in a timely manner.
Oh,
So I would add to that it would either need to be the receipt or the affidavit, because
We
excellent
have an
example
affidavit.
with the fuel, what happens to us sometimes, especially working, if we're working late at night, you'll stop somewhere near the gas pump, and if it's out of paper or it's jammed, and then the store's closed, you have no way to get the receipt.
Yeah.
I've had
Take
that
a
happen.
copy
And
of
Sign an affidavit.
take a picture of the gas pump.
They have an affidavit to
Okay.
sign, because when the guys, and I'm talking about the law enforcement, went and helped with Hurricane Harvey. Some of them used a credit card, and then the receipts, I guess, got stuck in their pockets, and they were dissolved, and they could. Okay, just, you wanna tell it, Kevin?
That was me. Everybody gave me their receipts and I jumped off the boat to get someone in a wheelchair. We were there for hours. Everything was destroyed, illegible. It was in my pocket. There were 3 deputies. And I'm the one who jumped out of the boat. while it was
But
still-
About my point.
there's an affidavit that
So
they
it was
can
all
sign
lost.
before a lost receipt.
My point is, you want them in a timely manner.
Well, no,
That's where I'm going. If they don't, there's no reason you should have to call everybody and say, I need your receipt.
Exactly.
If they don't show up with a receipt, it comes out of their check. That will probably
That's something y'all
prevent them.
decide. I'm not making that call.
It's right here in the policy. It's right here in the policy.
That's something y'all need to make.
It's in the policy.
That's what I was saying earlier, that's the motivator for people to follow what the policy says.
But they say, what is a timely manner?
Yeah, I think John Christopher should weigh in on that.
It's in the policy.
Ultimately be responsible.
I don't think y'all can garnish wages.
I'm not gonna do that. Y'all can.
Toledo?
Yeah, but I'm not gonna do that.
I forgot what I was gonna say. So on that part where y'all are talking about the timely manner, we could put a little blurb in there, cause it was brought to my attention that what's considered a timely manner on page 17, which is, it talks about payments at the end of each billing cycle, all credit cards, receipts, invoices, purchase orders, and or transaction log shall be sent to the treasurer's office for processing on the first business day of each month. So that would be considered the definition of the timely manner. That's what the treasurer's office is requesting, that all receipts and supporting documents for credit card transactions to be in by the first of the month.
Well, that's when the credit card purchase or the bill is due, right? You have to have time to process everything, so you need to put that timely manner prior to that
It'd be
deadline.
nice if they turn them in on a weekly basis.
Yeah,
Yeah. That way they won't lose them as fast.
put it in a policy.
Put in a week or something.
Michelle?
Take
I
time
just
out.
make a suggestion that it would be helpful if we got a copy of the bill for the card that we have, so that we can actually verify and make sure that we have everything there. And then also, if we did the automatic emails to remind everybody the week before, like we do for all of the invoices and payroll and everything else, that would be beneficial.
Well, it would be a little bit time consuming for her to have to scan in or copy the whole thing and then break it up by individuals.
No, I was
to
meaning
send
like
out.
if we could have access to log in and see what was on our account.
I don't know if that would be.
That's what I used to do with my guys.
I will
When they
say,
had a credit
that's what
card, they didn't give me a receipt, come out of the check.
That's what I was
It
doing.
happened
Heather,
about
the
once.
second of the month would send me our stuff for our office, and that way I could actually put it in order, which made it made it faster for her. It was exactly in the order of the statement, rather than me just sending random receipts. But in the last month, I've stopped doing it that way, because this said it had to be in by the first, and the statement.
We don't
came
use
out
the
with
form?
third. No, I do use the form.
Oh, okay.
In my situation, I have my elected official who uses his credit card, and then I have to utilize it for some things. I was told only one credit card per department, so I don't have one to keep track of myself. So I gotta maintain the log for purchases that I'm not even making. And so it's helpful to me, if I'm going through this, that I can, then I can go and just ask him for it, instead of not knowing that something was purchased, because he hadn't forwarded me the email receipt or handed me the actual receipt.
The bottom line is we have to have receipts,
Understood.
you know. And if we can give y'all something to log in, like John said,
That'd be awesome.
we'll see what Citibank says. We'll work with them and see what they put.
All right.
But y'all have got to help us in order for us to help y'all.
I don't disagree. Talita?
So back to the page 18 on the definition of the disciplinary action, it says the card holder may also be subject to disciplinary action by their respective department heads. If an agreement is not agreed upon, Commissioner's Court has final decision.
Sounds good.
Commissioner's Court has final decision on what, discipline?
Yes. On the,
Dispute.
for the dispute, for
On
the,
dispute.
yes.
Okay, sure, make sure I'm clear.
Under the responsibilities, the first one,
Wait, what
So
page?
What page are you?
I was still on 16.
We were at 18 just
I'm
then.
sorry.
Yeah, but we jumped 17.
Okay, so the responsibilities, if we're jumping around. Ensure sales tax is not charged at the time of the purchase. I was just telling Janice that there's a lot of times when you're purchasing things, and I ran into this a lot, setting up the county court at law. There's a lot of times that you have to pay for it, and then you turn in your exemption form afterwards, and then they will reimburse. There's no option to do it ahead of time.
A lot of it's, they will credit the account, right?
Yes, they'll credit the account.
This is just telling you that we want to try to ensure that there's not sales tax. We know that sometimes you're gonna have to be reimbursed, but there's a lot of people that technically will go to
$3.26.
Office Depot or something and just swipe their card, so they can look at their receipt, and then now we've got tax on it. So are you gonna drive, you're gonna waste $6 to go back to and gas to go get
No,
the?
I was just gonna suggest that we put a comma and say, or immediately thereafter. Just to clarify.
You're on what page?
16.
Responsibilities, first sentence.
Or immediately after purchase?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we're done with page 16. We're not going back to it. We're done with 17. We're not going back to it.
No, we haven't done 17.
Sir? We haven't done 17?
Yeah, I think, under authorized purchasing card use, saying you're giving one card to one department,
That's not what we're saying.
and then you need to take out that no other person is authorized to use that card.
It's on the next page. I found that.
The unique card that department receives will have the department name embossed on it and shall only be used by the approved personnel. No other person is authorized to use that card. So, I can use it, Sheree can use it, Greg can use it, but you can't use it. Because they would be authorized personnel in my department, but I couldn't give it to you for you to use it. That's the way I understand
That's what
that.
it's intended for.
Okay.
Each department, if they go to the one where they wanna do the group department cards, where you get away from everybody having one in their name, then whoever that department, elected official, head, whatever your title's called, says everybody in their department has authorization to use this credit card. And it's not tied to that one person's name,
Right.
so,
So how do you deduct out of his paycheck?
because he's gonna,
We'll take it out of the department head.
yeah, they're gonna be, the department head's gonna be
That's
responsible.
Not doing it.
Okay, can we go to page 18 now?
Todd, does that address your concern?
Yes.
All right. 18?
I made that one change, I think, that we just talked about, so I think we're through with 18 too.
19,
19?
How many pages have we got?
20.
Well, some of them are forms, we don't need them.
Yeah.
21.
I didn't have anything on 19. Anybody? Twenty?
Well, making progress.
On 20, there's just a typo. So where you have your 3 bullet points,
Uh-huh,
the goods, it says where it should be worth.
yep. Good catch.
Just helping.
You have referenced the other pages, like whatever, but page 27 is the log.
Where are we at?
And
What page are you on?
I'm just asking a question on page 20. The purchasing log, Greg's not in here any longer. I was gonna ask the question, could that be made electronic or is it already electronic? It is electronic? Is it like a PDF where you can,
I can put it,
It's in Excel.
it's in Excel, it's either in Excel or Word, but they can print them out
okay.
and type that.
I just didn't know if there's one that they could
He
even,
might be able to
a
trans.
PDF and
he
we
can
could just
come up
type it
with-
in.
I'm not that tech savvy, but he's more than welcome to come to my office and make them that way.
Would you make a note to ask him,
To make them where they can be.
Greg, and see if that could be turned into a fillable PDF file?
Yep.
Judge, I was just gonna, just be perfect time to let them know that we have that form builder as part of our website. So
Cool.
we actually go to our own website, go to the auditor's page, set it up so that it automatically emails it to the appropriate person and one other for backup.
That'd be excellent.
Okay.
Okay.
21?
21.
The paragraph right above monthly account summaries is talking about if you purchase something and it's not an acceptable, doesn't come in acceptable, and you haven't made it correct with that company, before the credit card bill is due, it says then the purchase of that item will be considered in dispute. And I wasn't clear if we were doing a credit card dispute against the vendor at that point in time, or if the charge, the purchase itself, was gonna be in dispute, as in the person who purchased that item. So I just thought there might be some
I read it to
clarification
be the cardholder the credit company disputes. Is that right or wrong?
Hold on, I'm trying to reread it, cause it's.
If items purchased,
Okay, so this is saying like if you buy something and it's shipped in the mail and it's unacceptable, like you had with your desk, and you return it and you get nothing resolved, the vendor hasn't done anything to replace or correct the issue, then the county will dispute that credit card charge with the credit card company. That's what that means.
So that's what I was thinking, and that's how I was reading it.
Yes. Because it's
But-
talking about the items purchased or found to be unacceptable. The card holder, meaning whoever is in charge of that card, is responsible for obtaining the replacement or the correction of the item as soon as possible. If the vendor has not replaced or corrected the item by the date the card holder receives his or her monthly statement, like if you haven't gotten an agreement that they're gonna send something to you, then we're gonna dispute that charge.
Right. So can we just add that in there, cause I heard several completely opposite, that's how I read it, but there was several completely opposite
What-
responses
I
to
mean,
how
how
they
much,
interpreted
then
it.
that purchase item will be, and I mean, what do you wanna say?
I would say then the purchase of that item will be disputed with the credit card company.
Then the purchase of that item will be disputed with
That's after you.
the credit card company.
Okay.
It says it.
And that way the onus is not on the individual, they know, all right?
Got it.
The next one talks about the, required documentation, 3 business day period, to be considered delinquent. Is that on the credit card receipts?
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, cause that's
So-
all we're
That's
talking
turning
about.
in, that's because we're only talking about the credit card, that's turning in like, that's everything that this thing talks about, the procurement log, the credit cards, the backup paperwork, whatever is required for that transaction.
Okay. And then 2 or more consecutive delinquent months will be grounds for withdrawing. I mean, I know we all get busy, but I don't really have a problem with that if we're gonna be responsible with the cards that are issued to us. Andrew, are you okay with that?
I only object to the things I have mentioned.
Okay, well-
No.
All right,
She knows how to object, I've seen her.
okay.
I only spoke when I have a problem, otherwise I got no problem.
I didn't know you were tired or had a concerned look, so that's why I was just, okay, all right. Then we're good on 21. 22 is the last page, and alls I put on there was okay. In my notes.
I just had one question as to, and just because it directly affects, my boss.
What page are you
Under-
on?
I'm 22.
Okay,
The prior separation from the county or transfer to another department, this goes into the going and having the cards all say department. Are we gonna redo those and reissue cards where they're not in the name?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, because previously I went with the person, so
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify that.
and the reason being, I had one department, she would not let her assistant use her card any way, shape, form, or fashion.
okay.
So, I'm gonna put district attorney,
Card 1, 2, 3,
Department.
whatever.
you know, it's not gonna have anybody's.
That makes
name.
good sense, I
Okay,
think.
I'm done.
And on the, sheets, the logs, maybe we can get Greg to form build most of these with the new information. That would be great.
That would be beneficial.
Oh, I think it'd be excellent. Okay, we've been through this, so Talita, you captured all of the changes, I think. So we'll get a new draft, do we, commissioners, we have it on to take action, so what action would you prefer to take with all of the changes that have just been made on the policy? Are we okay to take action and approve the purchasing procedures manual with the understanding that audit is going to make the changes we've prescribed?
Well, and John Wren's gonna provide some verbiage, and
I
we're
was
gonna
gonna
get
say,
some verbiage with the.
We gotta get with, I'll get, maybe, I mean,
You,
say
Michelle,
it
and
for
John
me,
C on one.
Michelle, John, and John.
Okay,
Because in order for us to get the correct legal verbiage, I need to get with John C, and then John Wren's gonna work on one, and then I can, with all the other changes, a lot of it was Michelle's suggestion.
mhm,
So I can work with her on getting those to make sure that I captured everything, which I'm pretty
Okay.
sure I did.
okay.
Why don't we get these changes made and bring it back at our next week's meeting? and
I
do
think
the
she was concerned about the audit.
You want it, or do
I
you
think we
need
can
it?
have it with the changes as we discussed.
Change the discussion, if not, then we modify. All right, so you wanna make a motion, Commissioner?
I'll make that motion.
I'll
And that
second.
is,
to approve, the proposed purchasing policies and procedures manual with the, suggestions brought up today.
Okay, and Commissioner Dobianski, you second that motion?
Yes.
The motion has been made to approve the proposed purchasing policies and procedures manual with the suggested changes discussed today. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Before we ask for item 3 to be taken care of, I just want to thank all of you folks that have endured. I appreciate the auditing department bringing this to our attention and pursuing us to get this done. Treasurer's Group, I understand your frustration and pain of trying to keep the record straight, and we appreciate your efforts. Is there a motion?
I make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
There's a motion to adjourn by Commissioner Walker, Commissioner Dobianski, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.